You are now entering the spoiler zone. The following podcast contains explicit plot details and pockets of profanity. You have been warned. The Exton Moss Experiment. Adventures in Wine and Space with Simon Exton and Ken Moss. Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to another edition of the Exton Moss Experiment. I'm Ken Moss, and this time it's the first of two omnibus editions where we guest on episodes of Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, the Doctor Who commentary podcast. In 2022, Simon recorded full commentaries on all 6 episodes of The Web Planet from 1965 with Joe Ford and Cy Hyde. And here they are, welded together into one absolutely delightful listen. Enjoy!
Penknife would do it quicker.
Welcome back to Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, the Doctor Who commentary podcast. Old friends and new friends are here today, somewhat confusingly both called Simon. So for the purposes of this recording, one will be Cy, and that's Simon Hart. Say hello.
Hello.
And the other is Simon Exton. Say hello, Simon.
Hello, Simon.
Oh, fabulous.
You see, I listen to the podcast. I know what I'm supposed to do.
I'm honoured. Simon, you've got a number of podcasts, haven't you, of your own?
I do. I podcast with a very old and dear friend called Ken Moss. And he and I met at a big screen screening of Rose in the centre of Liverpool way back in 2005. And we've been friends ever since. And every so often we would get together for weekends of Doctor Who and telefantasy, because he's never actually had a girlfriend that has had any interest in that kind of thing. I've almost never had a boyfriend who's had any interest in that kind of thing. So we sort of ditch the other halves every so often, get together and watch old stuff. And then after a few years, when I was starting to recycle the suggestions of things to watch, we said, well, why don't we start recording our thoughts so that we know what we've thought about these things? And it was a very, very short trip from that to setting up a podcast. Been going for a few years now. We do about 2/3 archive television and 1/3 Doctor Who. And when we do Doctor Who, we do it as a commentary.
Oh, fantastic. What's like the most out there thing that you've talked about there, Night? What's the weirdest thing you guys have discussed?
One of the things that we really, really differ in our opinion on is something called the Corridor People.
Oh, yes, I've heard of you talk
Corridor People.
The Corridor People. It is 4 episodes of utterly bonkers 60s weirdness, which I love beyond measure and Ken absolutely cannot stand. We did an episode on that, and it is the most opposed we've been on anything because it was torture for him and I absolutely loved it. But then he made me watch the Alan Clark Diaries, so he kind of got his own back.
I'm going to seek out your Corridor People episode tomorrow and watch it and listen to it. Sorry. It sounds amazing.
And we've also done some Tomorrow People, which is quite... There are some special episodes of the Tomorrow People. And
do you know what? Recently, I decided to dip my toes. So I just watched some like random episodes, So I watched the first episode of every season. Big mistake. And then I watched this episode that featured Peter Davison in gold pants and a wig. And he was from like the southern state world. And everyone was talking in an accent. Hey, Sluggerberg. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. There was a comedy sequence in a grocer's where the greengrocer got shot with blood. I was like, this is tonally very strange.
That particular episode of The Corridor People is the only other thing that we've done a commentary for.
Oh.
Because I was a bit cruel, and that was the first Tomorrow People that I inflicted on Ken, and I wanted to record his reaction, and it was fairly priceless. We've done a few others since,
It is unforgettable. Now, you haven't actually named your podcast, so if you could do that now, really quickly.
The main one's called the Exton Moss Experiment, and we've got a couple of spin-offs from that. So we do a few regular features in it. We always do a gin review. We call that the tonic screwdriver. And I know quite a lot of people who like gin but don't really want to sit through a great long description of Doctor Who while they're listening to gin reviews. We've taken that out, and there's a separate tonic screwdriver podcast. We've started doing reviews of audios, so Big Finish audios, some of the BBC audios, and some old stuff dating back to the Goons and things like that. So we've done a fair mix of those.
You know what? I'm not nicking ideas from you, I promise, but I've got a Big Finish YouTube channel coming out soon, and we're calling it Finish Big. Well, yeah, I think Doctor Who and naughtiness comes hand in hand, you know.
Absolutely. And it's a kind of love-hate with Big Finish, because we've picked ones that are easy to talk about, and that's either the really good ones or the really bad ones.
Yeah.
And we deliberately started off doing the really good ones because I hate rubbishing things, and Big Finish do such good stuff. We didn't want to start off rubbishing it. Then the Secrets of Detsen crept in, and well, we're not kind to it. But I'm not sure anybody was.
It is a mixed bunch, isn't it?
Finally, we do one called Kinky Boots, which is an episode by episode rewatch of the original Avengers.
Kinky Boots. That sounds amazing. My God, it sounds like I've got a lot to listen to, do you know? But before we skip into this episode, don't think you're going to get away with this, Cy Hart, because you have your own podcast as well, which you haven't really spoken about much on this thing. So
we never asked me.
Off you go.
Okay. Well, I have Maximum Power, which is the Blake Seven podcast, as we say, because it's better than all the rest. Sorry to all your listeners of all the other ones. We are doing it episode by episode with a cast of podcasters from across the world, which has been great fun, but very difficult to schedule, as you probably know from doing Untitled Star Trek projects. So, but yeah, it's been really good, and it's gone down really well. And we have just finished recording Series B, other than the retrospective. And now I've got to sit and edit all the episodes of Series B.
Will you get on with it, please? I've just binge listened to the second half of your season, and now I want more.
Well, you'll have to wait. I've only done 2 so far.
It's because you spend most of your time doing this, honestly.
Well, yeah, you do take up a lot of my time, Joe. It's not my fault.
You don't normally complain, honestly. Well, listen, I'm throwing this out to all the Simons now. What are we going to watch today, or be bold enough to watch today? And what are your initial thoughts on this story?
Simon chose this, so he better say what we're doing.
I picked a Doctor Who story I absolutely love, and has not quite the same reception to the majority of the rest of fandom. It's The Web Planet.
All responses negative. Hair thin and static.
Doctor, can't there just be something wrong with the TARDIS?
Wrong, my boy. We've been dragged off our course.
Barbara? Barbara, where are you? Barbara!
Kill her!
You chose ill when you chose to land on Voltis.
I keep telling you we didn't choose. Our ship was forced here.
I've seen a colony of ants eat their way right through a house. That size, they could eat their way through a mountain.
What lies at the center?
None of us have ever seen it and lived.
The Zarbi have a rendezvous. Disperse the spearhead. They will be massacred.
My TARDIS.
Leave us alone, you parasite!
What vortices I am. What you are, I will become.
How can you not love Hartnell? It is about the best TARDIS team that he had, apart from Ben and Polly, who are clearly the best TARDIS team ever. It is mid-season 2, so they've all found their stride. The production's found its stride. They're putting out really good stuff pretty much every week. It is about the most inventive Doctor Who ever gets, and certainly the most visually inventive. And
definitely the most ambitious, I think, Doctor Who's ever. I don't think there's a story that's as ambitious as The Web Planet.
Yeah, I agree with you. And nothing that has come close.
They've never been as out there as this story ever again.
Like no humanoid characters beyond the regulars, realizing an entire alien world. Even like, I think even when it comes to like the dialogue and things like that, which is steeped in metaphor and poetry, and it's weird with a beard, this story. Do you think there's a confidence in series 2 then, in season 2, sorry, like they kind of like, they know they've made it so they can try and be a bit more experimental?
Yes, I think there is. And I think that goes on through to season 3 as well. And then by the time you're getting to season 4, it's kind of crystallizing into what Doctor Who would be for pretty much the rest of the classic run. And so that's why in season 4, you see the end of the historicals. Whereas here, you can bounce from ancient Rome to Vortis. You can have something as experimental as this, or the first episode of the Space Museum, which is, again, very ambitious from a storytelling point of view. The other thing that we don't really appreciate looking back is that because there were no part 1, part 2, part whatever, you didn't know tuning into a new story whether it was going to be a 6-part epic or The Rescue, where it's all over and done with within 2 episodes. So it all really just kept the audience guessing.
There's literally no format, no formula. Like, as we come to recognize it later on, oh, it's the 4-parters with a 6-parter at the end. It's a pseudo-historical. It's a this, it's a that. Anything goes in Hartnell's. That's what I love about Hartnell's type. It's just like they tried everything. Some things stick, some things didn't. Like, they didn't try anything like this again. That doesn't mean I don't think this is a success, but I love the variety of this, and just let's give it a go,
Yeah, anything goes, doesn't it? It's joy. And they get all these authors that come in with just an idea and just give them time to explore it. And then you've got the talented designers in the BBC who are realizing it and being imaginative on their £2,500 that they've got to make each episode and finding ways to do this stuff that are incredible. It doesn't always come off, but they're trying their very best.
Season 2 has some amazing visuals. There's obviously Web Planet, but Planet of Giants. Okay, the story's a bit ploddy, but the visuals are fantastic.
Dalek Invasion Earth of the plug, the Doctor and Susan down the plug hole. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, and like you said, Simon, the Dalek Invasion of Earth going out on location for the first real time, and Doctor Who becoming really big for the first time, and epic storytelling.
Well, look, guys, are you ready to skip into episode 1? Let's head to Vortis and see what awaits us. So what do you think about these titles then?
I love them. I absolutely love them. I mean, I am a huge fan of 62. It's before my time. I don't even really remember John Pertwee watching it first time around. But there's still something weirdly nostalgic about these titles. They look incredible. You compare them to other TV titles that were around at the time, so sort of the early Avengers, that kind of thing. They're years ahead of their time.
Yeah, and because of that, they're kind of timeless, aren't they, as well, which is brilliant.
Oh, look, this is back in the time when we could still be in the historical garb from the previous adventure, which I also happen to love. Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there pretty much isn't a bad Hartnell historical.
But what about the contrast between the Romans and the Web Planet? I mean, that's some confidence, right? To go from one to the other.
Yeah, you've gone from historical farce to science fiction weirdness in the space of a week. That's wonderful.
But there is a question I want to throw out to both of you. And be honest with me. So I said this is one of the most ambitious Doctor Who stories they ever did. Is this too ambitious to be realised with a Doctor Who budget? Given, the reception that this story generally has.
I don't think so. I think it works. Apart from the Venom grubs, which do look a bit rubbish. I don't think there's a bad costume. The sets of Vortis look great. And by the time you're getting into the Temples of Light, they look fantastic. I would love to see this colorized, just to see what the Temples of Light would look like colorized. The Carcinome set is great.
We know, don't we, from previous photographs of sets that, they went all out colour, didn't they? Like the Marco Polo and the Aztecs set photos.
The Aztecs just look gorgeous.
Yeah, I would like to see that in colour as well. What about you, Si?
Yeah, I think they've pulled off alien planets in Lime Grove and Riverside already, so they're confident that they can do this. And although you can sometimes hear that they're on a wooden stage and you can hear their sort of footsteps, do you know what? I don't care. It's fine. I think they do a great job. I'm not entirely sure Richard Martin is always up to the job of making it as convincing as it could be, but that also is part of the joy of this story.
I do want to talk about Richard Martin as we go through this, because I do agree with you there. But here's our first appearance of the Zarbi. Incredible.
And for all I love this story, I do think the Zarbi look great. I think it was a mistake to have them in the first episode, because there is already so much going on with the TARDIS team and Vicky's headaches and going out and getting caught up in the web and the acid pool and everything. They could do a proper monster reveal at the end of the first episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that would be the best time for it to hit at the end of episode 1?
There's only a couple of scenes that they appear in, and I once edited them out to see what it would look like, and it works really well.
Oh my God, you took hold of an episode of Doctor Who and re-edited it?
Yeah, it's fan edit.
Oh, my respect.
Lots of people do
it. My respect for you has just gone through
the
roof.
Because you get that wonderful first shot that Vicky sees of the Zarbi on the scanner.
Absolutely.
And that's a cliffhanger shot.
Yeah. It kind of like rises up, doesn't it, into the screen?
Yeah.
And you see, this looks great. Well, maybe not the Venom Grub, but the Zarbi look great. But they would look equally great being introduced right at the end of the series.
Although, do you know what? That must have been, I mean, I've read reports of like the back problems people had playing the Zarbi. Like, that must have been hellish to wear that costume.
Oh, God, because the poor fellas in there are basically bent double with the weight of a grown man on their back. And I mean, I know people would be able to cope with that quite happily. For the number of hours that this must have taken, that's going so.
I don't know anyone who's spent that much time bent over. Thank you very much.
My friend Dan always used to say it's like a man with a wardrobe strapped on his back and trying to hobble round. And it's no wonder they're a bit ungainly, but they look
they
great.
Must have, and those actors must have thighs like tree trunks.
They're bent over and they're rubbing their paws together. I mean, Jesus, it's like going to a gay sauna, isn't it? Honestly. Did you see that effect of the web over the TARDIS?
Yeah.
Really nice.
Again, they're trying lots of things. And again, the sort of pulsing image on the screen is really different to what you usually get.
And I was listening to the commentary while I was preparing for this, and apparently they deliberately redid the TARDIS set, one to expand it a bit, but also to put the door onto the right, so it wrong-footed the viewers a bit, being so used to it being on the left-hand side.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
There is a deliberate attempt to weird you out in this episode, isn't there? Also, as well, one of the things I really, really love about 60s Who, and they lost it in the 70s, and I don't know why, is that they have the shots inside the TARDIS looking out on the planet. And I think that's a lovely effect. They do it in the Daleks as well, going out into the jungle. I think they do it in the Sensorites, going out into the spaceship.
They do. There's a fantastic one in the Sensorites, because in the Sensorites, it's not just open the door and look out. The camera actually follows them out into the spaceship.
And it really, and they don't do that again for years and years and years.
In the new series, they've gone for the alternative option, which is being outside looking in, which is a lot cheaper because you can just put a backcloth behind them. Whereas here, they've built a bit of a set to go out. I think that's a lovely effect.
And, you know, I'm a real sucker for TARDIS scenes. I think they really make a story. And they're beautifully done in this. And it's just the four regulars bouncing off each other.
Dr. Sarlexton, are you... I'm sorry, I hate to be rude. No, I don't. Does that mean you get extremely hard during Logopolis and Castrovalva then? Because it's full of TARDIS scenes and no stories.
Not as much as Matthew Waterhouse.
I swear that picture's doctored, you know.
Well, I'm not sure. I've seen it. You watch what's on screen. But you're right. I mean, there's just a real feeling of this being the TARDIS family here. And they've all really settled into their roles. I mean, Maureen O'Brien, this is her third story? And it's like she's always been there. She is so good.
Yeah, I love about Vicky. She's up for the adventure, isn't she? Susan was always a bit, waily and screamy, whereas Vicky just wants to get out there and have fun.
I always used to think Vicky was a bit rubbish, to be perfectly honest, because she never, and I've changed my opinion completely. She's there as surrogate granddaughter. She's the replacement for Susan. She's not there to resolve plot. She's there to drive plot. She's there to be the one that gets captured. But if you watch her performance, when she's in the background, she's there and she's doing stuff and she's reacting. It's not your some of the Peter Davison female companions who just stare off into space. And look
No, she's
how
always
look how much
thinking about
space
her
they've got in the
performance.
TARDIS there.
Yeah.
You rarely see that in the classic era.
No. I would say, particularly in this era where quite often, because the studios are so small, you've got 2 walls and the console if you're lucky. And here it's big again, and you've got extra rooms again.
Yeah, I mean, how is that? Like, I know Rachel Lambert said they sort of amortized the cost of that massive set by kind of spreading the cost across the first season. But then why is it then that as we go through 60s Who into 70s Who, it just seems that console room seems to get smaller and smaller, doesn't it? Until in Battlefield, it's just a backcloth.
Yeah. And the thing I've never actually noticed before, and I've just noticed, on the TARDIS console there's a Roman drinking cup.
There we go.
So they've nicked Nero's goblets.
Is this those fabulous couches that come out of the walls?
I think they're already out the wall. It's Edge of Destruction where they...
The Doctor takes an annual trip to IKEA. You know, Planet of the Daleks, he did it as well. So why do you think then Simon Exton... Oh my God, this is so hard to do Simon. Why do you think, Dr. Exton, that this is one of the best sets of regulars, like as a whole? Like you've mentioned Vicky, but what about the others?
They are all incredibly good actors. That's kind of the top and bottom of it. So with companions, you get level of writing and you get level of acting ability. And if you've got a really good actress like Maureen O'Brien, she will work beyond the fact that Vicky isn't the most interestingly written character, but she just makes it her own. And every little bit of it, she drags out as much as she can. And in the opposite way, you get characters that are brilliantly written, but not actually particularly well played.
I'm trying to think of an example now.
Donna.
Oh my word.
Donna is amazingly written. 99% of Catherine Tate's portrayal is
extraordinary.
Is comedy strop and done really well because she's a comedian.
Oh my God, you've just floored me on my own podcast. Well done.
But the times where she has to throw that extra emotional depth, she doesn't really do it. The bit in Silence in the Library where she has to say goodbye to her children, she knows they're not real, but she's supposed to feel all the emotions. It's as flat as anything. It just doesn't work.
Now, look, we can't really get into this now. I could not disagree with you more, but I think you need to come back and do a Donna episode because that would be a really interesting discussion, I think. But that's an interesting example. It's not one I thought you'd give, but that's a super interesting example.
Actually, I had dinner with a very old friend a few nights ago, and I was saying exactly the same thing, and he had exactly the same reaction that you had.
But isn't that the joy of all this, though, is that we're all coming at it with different opinions, you know?
And actually, he knows you anyway.
Who? Who is it?
I'll tell you when we're off mic.
Oh, excellent. It's not someone I've had sex with, is it?
I have no idea.
Oh, God.
And I'm not sure I want to know.
There's a good chance, you know.
So anyway,
one thing we can all agree on, I think, is how absolutely fabulous William Hartnell is in this episode. I mean, I know he's forgetting his lines all half the time, and that's why he's giggling away like a lunatic. But man, oh man, he plays these things so well.
See, I've never been convinced about that forgetting his lines bit, because if you listen to the audio of The Massacre, when he plays the abbot, he is script perfect. So I think an awful lot of it is deliberate doddery old man performance. He's going to come on to the Chatterton, Chesterton, Chatterley, whatever.
Chatterley.
There is no way he would forget the name of a character that he's been playing opposite every week for 2 years. No. So a lot of the Billy Fluffs are deliberate Billy Fluffs. And the other thing is, they were doing week in, week out for most of the year. And he was pretty much carrying the show. So he had a hell of a lot to learn. It's not surprising that he forgets the occasional thing.
I mean, we know that come the end of his run, he was having trouble with his lines. Like, that's documented. But I think his performances in season 2 are so confident. Like, even if he forgets the odd line, all of this stuff, you know, echoes, dear boy, ha ha. You know, he's basically, the show is his, isn't it? Like, you know, he's running.
Oh, it really is. He's just so twinkly and fun in this episode. And every second that he's on screen, you're watching him, because everything about him is magical and fun in this episode. This is one of my favorite individual episodes of Doctor Who. Unexpectedly, I remember watching this when BSB showed it in 1990, which was the first time I'd seen it. And sort of coming off the back of received fan wisdom, I was really surprised at just how much I loved this episode. I was absolutely entranced by it because there's nothing else sort of quite like it. And the atmosphere of it and the music that they choose from the stock is really, really, really well chosen. And you've just got your three regulars carrying an episode again.
Look at this. Look at Barbara being dragged out of the TARDIS by the gold. I think the bit later on where she's screaming, no, like it's forcing her out of the TARDIS. It's very scary.
There's that brilliant reaction as well from Vicky where Barbara's talking about it and Vicky just laughs because it's so weird. But that's such a real reaction because you don't know how to react to something like that.
Actually, do you know what they do here? And it doesn't happen often with Vicky, but they actually give her some backstory, don't they? Where she talks about, what is it? I have to go to school almost an hour a week. You know,
yeah, she studied medicine at 10.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's great. And what is it she says about the aspirin? You wouldn't like it if I was going to shove leeches on you. It's great.
And the bit about Vicky's description of her school is really nice because it's the whole, I studied medicine at 10 and I was taught by machines for an hour a week. But actually, I would have really liked to have come to your school. And
reading, writing, arithmetic, Dr. Exton.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, there she is laughing. Yeah. Which feels like a very natural reaction, doesn't it, when you're told something that's a bit absurd. Do you know, there's a sequence in a minute, right, where the Doctor and Ian stand in front of, what is that great big pyramid?
It's just a great big pyramid, isn't it?
Hasn't it got a name? Is it like the Chasm of Lights or something like that? It's called.
There's the Temples of Light that come along later.
Yeah, here, where they literally put the pair of them in front of... Like, how on earth do they achieve that?
I'm not entirely sure, sort of even looking at it now.
That's a superimposition, isn't it? So you record it once and then you record again, and it's why they're a little bit see-through.
Ah, right. Oh, yeah, that would work, wouldn't it?
Or whatever. I think it looks visually stunning, you know, for the time. And don't you just love as well with we were talking about this when we did the Aztecs site, you know, with incredible depth and integrity that we did that.
Yes.
Yes. Other Simon, we ended up calling it the Mexico people from Peru because we had no facts about it whatsoever.
We got everything wrong.
But I do love the depth that the back cloths give. And I mean, look at, you've got planets there, you've got crags in the background, stars.
Yeah, it works, doesn't it?
I think so, yeah.
A lot of planet backgrounds, you can see where the floor meets the walls. And as brilliant as the first episode of The Mind Robber is, you can clearly see where the edge of the floor and the walls is. None of that here.
You can now on the new cleaned up DVD version. Back with the old fuzzy VHS days, I think that white void in The Mind Robber looks extraordinary. Now, it's one of those poor examples of polishing it up actually diminishes the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder with the set designs here, whether because you've got all these rocky crags, that sort of distracts you from where the gap between the cyclorama and the edge of the set would be. Mm. So it's sort of disguised a bit more heavily than it would be normally. That's good design. That's brilliant.
I used to dislike the use of the Vaseline over the lens. It used to really irritate me. I quite like it now. I think it's nice and weird, you know?
Yeah, it's like the echoey sound as well. It just all adds to the slightly alien and weird atmosphere.
And I know the music here is stock music to save a bit of money, but actually it works really, really well.
Is it the same music they use in Galaxy 4?
Ooh,
yes, I think it is.
It's all like violins, isn't it? It's
Les Structure Sonore.
Oh.
Who are a French group who made music by great big glass instruments like wine glasses with water in that you would put your finger around the rim and make noise from. So Verity Lambert wanted them to do the theme music originally, but it would have been too expensive and difficult to do.
Wow, the last 6 years would have gone by very differently, wouldn't they? If they
very, very differently.
Oh, here we go. Why do the female companions always grab their heads in distress? I suppose there's a lot of noise going on right now, isn't there?
And the console spinning.
Yeah, that's weird. And you can see a power cord going into it as well. Yeah, it's so weird. And the idea of the
loads of space.
Yeah, I know. And it's kind of fun as well. You can kind of spot all the things that are in the background. I believe I can see an astral map,
First appearance of the astral map.
That might be important later on. You never know.
Don't you think this is super creepy? Something has forced the doors open and is forcing her out, out of safety.
Yeah, there's so much going on. This is why I say I don't think they needed to have the Zabi as another element of it until right at the end.
No, because they haven't actually added anything to this episode really at all. They haven't done very much other than chirrup noisily.
Well, there's the one that played peekaboo and threw a rock in the pool. That's
right, yeah, it's hiding away behind the rock. I can't remember what the cliffhanger is. Oh, my ship. My TARDIS. So it's a First Doctor story where they're cut off from the TARDIS. Well, that's original.
But they now split your cast in three so that they could go off and do different bits of the plot, which is really good.
And coming on the back of the Romans, which I think actually did that expertly, gave all three characters a plot thread, which meant the story moved in a very pacey way. Now, I think this story moves in a slightly less pacey way.
Yeah.
Well, Ian is pretty much sidelined for the whole of this. It's much more Barbara's story.
Yeah, she gets all the heroic bits, doesn't she?
Yeah. And it's Barbara being an action hero, which is fantastic.
That's what you want. That's what everyone wants.
She witnesses the Monoctra having his wings pulled off, doesn't she? It's all her reaction. Yeah, I remember that scene really well.
And you're building up to a beautiful 3-prong cliffhanger, or 4-prong, because Ian is trapped. Barbara's about to plunge into the acid pool. Vicky's stuck in the TARDIS that is going wrong, and now the TARDIS has disappeared.
Yeah, you can't beat a Whoppet close up on William Hartnell's face.
No.
I mean, he does. I mean, he literally fills the screen, but his performance fills the screen.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, look, they even called the next episode the Zabi. It feels like it's custom built to bring them in here. Gosh, that is a fantastic first episode.
That is. And and that was the highest rated episode for a very, very, very long time.
Until when? Is that until City of Death?
Until possibly. I can't remember whether one of the Hinchcliffe episodes beats it or not. But I mean, that was over 13 million people watched that episode. So there's a lot of publicity around the Zabi. They got a comic strip in TV Comic at the same time as they were on TV. So they were really being pushed as the next big thing. So, yeah, it obviously worked to get the audience in.
And realistically, what had they had before? The Sensorites, the Vord?
Yeah.
This is their chance to really push the boat out with a science fiction story, probably for the first time since the Daleks.
Yeah. Oh, Coquillion. Coquillion looks brilliant, but he's a single person.
Yeah.
Don't you mean cocky licking? Sorry.
If you prefer.
Thank you.
A hamster with a blunt penknife would do it quicker.
Welcome back to A Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, the Doctor Who commentary podcast. We have been drawn down from our astral plane down to Vortis, and we are ready to talk about episode 2 of the Web Planet, which is called The Zabi. Exactly. So I think things are about to get a whole lot weirder, aren't they?
Very much so. Yeah. Although, would it surprise the pair of you to know that before we head into this episode, I have a question for you both.
I'm stunned.
Far away.
What is your preference in the William Hartnell era? The historical or the science fiction tale? Or the sideways tale? Because they did those back then as well.
Oh.
That stumped you.
I think I have two answers, because it changes as he goes through. I think right at the beginning, if you ignore the Tribe of Gum, the historicals are generally better. But by the time you get into the end, kind of more invested in the science fiction. Having said that, I don't think there's a bad William Hartnell historical.
No, I agree. And even the Tribe of Gum, I think it has fantastic moments.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And it was a really good way to reintroduce the weirdness after having hit them front and center with An Unearthly Child. I do think that there are poor science fiction stories in the William Hartnell era.
Any examples?
But not a huge number. I would say the Space Museum, brilliant episode 1, all the rest could be condensed into a single part.
I know somebody who has something to say about that, but he's not here, so don't worry about it.
Sensorites, again, some nice ideas, but very slow. Big chunks of Dalek Master Plan could be cut out. They really don't need to go to ancient Egypt.
What about you, Si?
Well, I would say exactly the same thing, actually. I think the early historicals are magnificent and really unbeatable, but they were not the ones that I liked sort of in book form as a child. It was all the science fiction ones that really grabbed me and I was really interested in. And the historicals looked boring to me, sort of growing up in the 80s. And I think that was sort of the perception that you were given of Doctor Who, that the historicals were worthy, but no one watched them, no one really liked them, and they were all about the monoids and all the science fiction adventures or whatever. But I've come to appreciate those a lot as an adult. I've really, really loved those. But yeah, there's something about Hartnell science fiction, I think, which is really interesting. And they're going for big ideas and big concepts rather than just always sort of alien race of the week that's invading somewhere, which they settle on in season 4 and 5 particularly. So there's just, again, an anything goes feeling to this whole era, and they're going to try it whatever and however. And yeah, I like that very much about these 3 years.
Because it is right to the end of the 3 years, because The Savages, which is a story I really like. And I know it's not particularly well thought of, but it's a really nice story and it's doing something different.
Yeah, and even sort of the War Machines coming after that is something that Doctor Who has not really done before. It's just that becomes the template for what comes all the time afterwards.
Even where you end the era with the 10th Planet and those ghoulish Cybermen, like they hadn't done anything like that before either. So right up until the last minute, they were innovating. Well, gentlemen, shall we perhaps tip into the Web Planet episode 2, where the innovation is, well, riding high?
I'm ready.
Yep.
Then Simon, whichever Simon. It's so confusing.
Is it me? Am I counting us in?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So if you're ready for the Zarbi, in 3, 2, 1, go.
Off we go. So I'm assuming then the ratings were not quite as high for episode 2.
I think it sustained it pretty well. I'll have to look this up now because otherwise I'm going to get my facts wrong, and that would be
Sigh, you surprised.
I know, I have not come prepared. I'm so sorry.
Oh, God. Dr. Exton, now you are my new co-host, okay? All right.
Changes so quickly. You get another Simon in, yeah, and I'm out. That's fine.
Oh, dear. Right, what's occurring? I've lost all track of the plot.
We had a 4-prong cliffhanger, so Barbara's about to fall into a pool of acid.
That's right.
Vicky is stuck in the TARDIS that has vanished, so we don't know where she's ended up. And Ian is stuck in a great big net. See, I was paying attention.
And we're about to be introduced to the Menoptera, aren't we, for the first time? So, Simon Exton, what do you think of the Menoptera?
I think they look fantastic. The Web Planet was actually the first William Hartnell story I saw way, way, way back in the day, before any of the VHS releases. About the only way that you could get to see Doctor Who stuff was either turn up to conventions or try and persuade somebody who was able to copy tapes to send you a tape. And I managed to badger somebody to send me a Hartnell and a Troughton, and I got the Web Planet and the Crotons, which is why both of them have a special place in my heart, but particularly the Web Planet. I absolutely loved it. My first introduction was the Radio Times 20th anniversary special, where they did a list of all of the Doctor Who stories to that point, and their description of the Web Planet was the monster story to end all monster stories, with not just 1 but 5 different alien races. And that was the entire description, and it just sounded fascinating. And that came out at the same time as the 5 Doctors was being screened. That was really the thing that turned me from somebody who enjoys watching Doctor Who and has watched it my entire life to I am a fan of Doctor Who, and there is a massive history about this that I want to know about. And there are all these stories that I want to hear about. And it was as a result of that I joined DWAS back in 83.
Obviously, you had an idea of what the story was going to be like, given that description. Did it live up to what you were hoping it was going to be?
Oh, hello. We have a Menoptera.
We do. Just bursting up onto the screen there. That was a good moment.
I've been having lessons from, what's her name? Who did the...
Rosalind de Winter.
Rosalind de Winter. I think that's nice that they give them body language, though, like
yeah, it's kind of proto-voguing.
Yeah, just an extension from the costume, It's just a real attempt to suggest that they were... Do you know what's amazing? Is later on, when they come swooping in on the wires, that weird music playing in the background. It's incredible.
But that's one of the things that the new series does now, doesn't it? Where they have coaches to do the alien movement so that all of the alien races are sort of well thought through. So all of this started in the 60s, and we mocked it for years, saying, insect movement by Rosalind de Winter. But actually, they're doing something to create a credible and different kind of alien race that some of the other alien races afterwards would have done well to sort of emulate.
Are you attempting to suggest that the Hath are as memorable as the Menoptera? I'll take that as a no.
No, but the Menoptera are beautiful. They've made them with wings that actually extend, which is just wonderful. It's just that attention to detail really makes them.
Oh, wowzers. That's a model shot, isn't it? The TARDIS being dragged across that sort of smoky plain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are trying, aren't they?
It's ambitious.
I don't mean that.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, well, this is the point where I want to ask you about Richard Martin and his merits or otherwise as a director. And I'm going to throw this out to Dr. Exton first.
Looking at it dispassionately, there are bits of this where the direction could be tightened up. I talked in the last episode about how we could do without the Zarbi in it and having a proper monster reveal at the end. This would be a fantastic monster reveal where you've just got Vicky looking up at the scanner with the Zarbi peering in, and there's just all that reaction on her face. Maureen O'Brien did that brilliantly, and that would make a fantastic monster reveal. But we didn't get that. I don't think he's the greatest director that the show has ever seen. I think they needed somebody with a bit more, or could have done with somebody with a bit more oomph and a bit more vision for that. And somebody like Waris Hussein would have been fantastic. But they didn't have Waris Hussein. They had Richard Martin. I think he does a good, competent job, and the inventiveness of the plot and the visuals cover up for degrees of slow direction. This bit where they're just bemused by Barbara's hair.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful?
My biggest objection to Richard Martin is that in the special features of The Chase, and I think this as well, he is lamenting the fact that, he didn't have a lot of money to realize, because he had really beautiful ideas of how this should look, and that he didn't have the time to get it right. But, they gave him all the blockbusters of season 2, didn't they? They gave him Dalek Invasion of Earth, they gave him The Chase, and they gave him The Web Planet. So that's the big hitters of this season, really.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's up to directing those. And you look at the work that Douglas Adams is doing in the same
Douglas
season.
Camfield, you mean?
Oh, sorry. Did I say Douglas Adams? I'm so sorry. He was a director long before he was a writer. No. But with the same money, with the same time, and it's far more polished. And so I don't think it's I don't think he can blame time and money. I do think it's down to the competence of the director. And there's scenes in this, like where the Zarbi walks into the camera, where Ian and Frestin go underground, and you can hear someone laughing in the background. Like things like that they should never have made it to the screen, no matter how few cuts they can have. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I think this is completely incompetent. I think they do a good stab. I question whether they handed it to the right man, personally.
It's really interesting because Richard Martin is a brilliant director on film, where he does have more time and he does have more control and he can cut a lot more easily. So you think of the Dalek and Mechanoid fight at the end of The Chase, or those scenes running around London in the Dalek Invasion of Earth. and suddenly that seems almost like a different director to the rest of the stories that you're watching. So he does have a flair when he's got time and sort of resources to do that. I think his studios always seem a bit fraught, and I don't know whether he's just sort of trying to push it just a bit too far and is a bit out of his comfort zone and can't quite get what he wants onto the screen. But it always feels like nothing is ever quite right when he's on videotape in the studio trying to put things together. I mean, he always casts well, and the cast of this they do magnificently.
What is going on here with the TARDIS being dragged into that thing with all the tentacles reaching out? It's so weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, see, there is imagination here that comes from the script, and he is doing his best to bring that up.
Is there an inference that this whole planet is alive? Because like the kind of the evil cancer that's under the ground, it's part of the planet, isn't it?
It's grown from the fabric of the planet, and there's a bit later on where they say when it's grown right the way around the planet, it'd be too late.
That's an incredible idea, isn't it?
And it's interesting that you say cancer, because the name carcinome was taken from carcinoma, a description of cancer.
Of course, yes.
You know what? I'll bring the smart sometimes, not often.
Courtesy of Wikipedia, I think.
Oh, okay. I think I might have taken the idea from Maureen O'Brien, who mentions that in one of the special features, actually. She says, this kind of evil cancer that's growing at the heart of this planet. But that is a staggering idea.
Yeah, I think Bill Strutton is very imaginative. His ideas are big and alien, and imagining a world that has a cancer that is growing and has changed the world and has forced sort of the population away and has taken control of the animals is just wonderful.
Well, talking about Bill Strutton, Dr. Exton, have you read the novel of this, The Web Planet?
Yes, quite a few times.
I never have. How does it read?
Pretty well. It does expand on some bits of the story. It's quite a long time since I've read it. The novel was actually my first introduction to the story proper before I saw it.
Right.
And
okay.
That's true for almost all of the 60s Doctor Who, because I've read the targets before any of the VHSs were available.
Yeah, it was the only way we had to experience them, wasn't it?
It's kind of why the historicals were a bit unknown territory for me when I came to watch them, because most of the historicals weren't in that run of Terrance Dick's very short Target novels. They tended to come along later, and you had Donald Cotton doing the Romans and the Mythmakers and the Gunfighters, and they're all brilliant books, but they're all good series.
Yeah, and then John Lucarotti came and did all of his, but that wasn't until sort of the mid-80s at the earliest. So it was only The Crusaders was the one, wasn't it, originally? So
well, it was one of the original three, wasn't it? It was this, The Crusade, and the Daleks.
An exciting adventure with the Daleks.
Yeah. And they were the three ones in the 60s, and then it was sort of mid-70s by the time you get in the Terrance Dick stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when your original realization of this story was in your head, you printed all the pictures yourself. So I find that even more extraordinary than that you then went on and watched this and you were as impressed as you. No, I'm being wicked. Sorry. Do you know what? I've complained about Richard Martin, but there was a extraordinary shot there from above. He shot it from right above the set of the Zarbies all surrounding the Doctor and Ian.
Yeah.
That was quite impressive.
It looks fantastic. And there was a shot earlier that was really, really nice of Vicky and the TARDIS shot through the time rotor.
Yes.
It just looked wonderful.
So I wonder if he did have, maybe if he did have more time. And certainly more money. So you were saying about when he's shooting on film, and those sequences of the Menoptera flying in, that's on film, isn't it?
That is, yeah.
It does look a cut above. Those sequences, I think that's where his vision is best realised, in those sequences there.
Yeah, with some of the 60s directors, it would be interesting to see what they'd have done in the 70s and the 80s when there is a bit more time and a bit more budget, and see if they could have done something, how they would have approached it differently.
I wouldn't want to ever complain about the special effects of classic Doctor Who, but if this was being done now, it would look extraordinary, wouldn't it? Like the planet would be tendrils everywhere. You'd have butterflies flying about all over the place. It would be visually astonishing, I think.
Yeah, and the set designer talks on the DVD with Richard Martin about how they wanted the Carcinome sets to be really organic and blobby, but they were constrained by the materials that they had to make it because they had to erect it in the studio. So you couldn't do what you could do now and sort of do a very organic kind of set sort of fairly easily. But then they had to have something physical that was there. And so you have to have edges and you have to have things standing up sort of rigid. And as I said, they had to recreate it each week back in the studio. They had to put the set back up. So they had to have something that could physically be the same each week.
And I think they do really well with the outside because there are tendrils growing into it.
Yeah.
It's a very three-dimensional structure. And you get a real feeling of sort of looking down through that corridor in the Carcinome of a maze in the way that a lot of sets that try and do the same thing later on in the show's history just don't manage. I mean, you compare this to Omega's Citadel in the Three Doctors.
Oh, my.
Yeah, which is really poor design, isn't it?
It's like creme brulee, doesn't it? Honestly.
And this has a ceiling.
Yes, which you don't get very often.
Yeah.
I'm a whore for a ceiling in Doctor Who. I really am. They're so rare.
Mm-hmm. We talked over it, but we just had the most amazing shot of a monster going into the TARDIS and seeing it go in through the police box and see it from the console room as well, which is just incredible.
Are the hostile displacement circuits on or something? Why does it have a breakdown and then come running out again?
I'm throwing that over to Dr. Exton.
I'm assuming that it's because it gets freaked out because as it goes into the TARDIS, the Animus's control drops.
That makes sense. Oh, I love this crystalline communications device here. And initially I thought, oh, look at this, and they're kind of like playing about with the crystals, but actually he does it like several times, and he does it exactly the same way each time. So they have actually thought through this prop and how it works. It's really
and the whole contrast between the surface vortice shots where there's the lens Vaseline and everything, and okay, you can laugh that it looks very primitive, and it does look primitive. They were working with what they had at the time. There's a real contrast between that and the indoor sets.
I'll tell you what, Dr. Exton, there's nothing wrong with using Vaseline to get the desired effect,
I am aware of this. You're a filthy, filthy man. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, see, look, now I've got someone who's cheering me on. I love it.
Makes a change, doesn't it, to be told off?
I was going to ask you about the sound effects, right? Because obviously we listen to this with the sound on, or at least I am. And I've heard complaints, that the Zarbi sound effects can be a little bit grating after a while. But actually, I think, especially in 60s Who, where, they don't always have the money, the sound effects go a long way to creating the atmosphere and the mood of the story.
Oh, God, yeah. You watch something like Galaxy 4, and the sound effects are just wonderful. Or the Crotons.
Oh, yes.
Where there isn't a musical score, but Brian Hodgson is providing one.
What about the Mind Robber with the white robots and the Clockwork Soldiers? Yeah.
And this is, again, the time before synthesizers. So they're doing this with cut-up sounds and tape and loops and on a very, very fast turnover. And he's making the series sound incredibly distinctive. And it's no wonder it's sort of influenced a generation of people.
I'm not sure about this action set piece we're getting.
Whack the Zarbi. Give John Scott Martin what for?
Look, he's got the thing inside his mouth. It looks like they're dancing.
The whole point is that the Menoptera aren't supposed to be fighters. They're supposed to be peaceful. They weren't able to get rid of the Animus to start with. They've had to learn the concept of fighting, and they're not all that good at it.
That's true. And if they had the money to do like a swarm of ants, just all coming all over each other, like a swarm does. And doesn't he say like he's seen like a swarm of ants eat through a house?
Yeah.
Yes. Like that. If they'd had the money to realise something like that, it would be absolutely extraordinary.
And there was a bit there where the venom grubs have killed one of the Menoptera and it's just lying there on the ground. And the Zabi comes in and is just stomping all over the wings.
Yeah, he literally stands on him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
What about what they do now? This bit's horrible. And what's fabulous about this scene, well, not fabulous, it's horrific, is it's all through Jacqueline Hill's acting, isn't it? About what's happening. And I think that is scarier. Like, not showing us what's going on is actually, my imagination can go pretty far, you know.
And the bit in this where she was wearing the gold collar and under control, and he pulls the gold collar off, and you can see him struggling with the control to be able to drop it. That was beautifully done.
Are there venom grubs on skateboards or something? Because I tell you what, they get across those set at a fair old lick.
I thought there was somebody crawling away underneath.
Well, there's a scene later on where one just goes straight across the set. It's amazing.
Yeah, there we go. Jacqueline Hill's just horrified. She's so good.
That is just horrific.
Yeah.
In a sort of hidden horror kind of way.
Just the whole idea of it. And Hartnell here, where he's trying non-verbal communication with the Zabi, is the Doctor trying to think his way through this situation, isn't it? Because
that was the very first bit of this story I ever saw. What? When they put it, bizarrely, on a trailer for Silver Nemesis in 1988.
Really?
Yeah. Vividly remember the bit where Ian says, no, the Doctor's not getting through to them.
Oh, look, here we go. Come along and drop this hairdryer or whatever it is.
Oh.
Can someone do the line?
Why do you come now?
It's a great voice, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's brilliant. And
Escape
it's
to Danger.
Well. Oh, that's a proper Target Big title, that is.
That sounds like a Terry Nation title to me.
Oh, it's one of Terrence Dix's favourite chapter titles for his Target books.
Oh, okay. Well, then, to add an episode, because I've got a couple of minutes, I want to ask you both, do you like the individual episode titles? Or do you think, like, when they were dropped and we just had one story title, that was the right time to do it? Dr. Exton.
Briefly, yes and yes. And
okay.
I do like them. And it's like I was saying at the beginning, it must be really exciting to start a new story and not know how many episodes it was going to be. Is this going to run for 12 episodes, or is it going to be over in 2? Or is it just going to be a filler one piece that goes on to something else at the end of it? Is it going to be a standard 4 by the time you come into the end of season 2? Is this historical going to stay a historical, or is it going to end up with some sort of science fiction weirdness to it? Yeah, I like the individual story titles. I mean, I love pretty much all of Classic Who, so I like the thing that it crystallized into in Series 4. I don't think they could have sustained the level of inventiveness that they were doing in the first 3 years, pretty much throughout the whole of the Hartnell run. But I love that level of inventiveness, and I think the individual episode titles really encapsulate that.
Si?
Yeah, I think you're right. It was always billed, wasn't it, in the Radio Times as an adventure in time and space, or space and time. And that was all it was. You never knew how long it was going to be. What I like about the individual episode titles is it means that we've had now nearly 60 years of being able to argue about what the stories are actually called overall, which is always a joy. So, and we are still arguing that one to this day. So it doesn't matter how many pieces of paperwork there are. No one still has a definitive answer on all of them, and we will all disagree on that. So, I mean, that's good. I think as we hit more formulaic Doctor Who, having a story title and individual parts makes perfect sense. But here again, we're freewheeling. It's the early years. We can do anything, and we are. I think some of the individual episode titles leave a lot to be desired. Terry Nation.
Are you kidding me? They're some of my favourites. The Death of Time, The Brink of Destruction. I mean,
no. I think no. It's more Terry Nation's Coronas of the Sun. I mean, it sounds good, but it has no meaning for the whole episode.
Are you telling me you wouldn't turn up for the episode called Coronas of the Sun, whether you were hoodwinked or not?
I'd have probably turned up anyway. It's Doctor Who.
The other thing that you can have an argument about with, in some cases, is just what constitutes a story and how long is it?
Yeah.
Because I'm an absolute believer in that the first 4 episodes is 2 separate stories. And An Unearthly Child is an individual story. And then The Tribe of Gum is
Is
a
the next
3-episode
adventure.
historical.
Yeah, and you can argue it because it's the same production team, same author, but it's not necessarily the same story.
And in a way, you can argue that the arc is 2 different stories.
I was just going to
Yeah.
say that. I was literally just going to say that. I was waiting for a pause. Yeah. Actually, you could kind of have fun with this, couldn't you? And split up.
Yeah, and because the stories are all, there's more often than not a cliffhanger into the next story, it is one continuous narrative.
On the Exton Moss experiment, when we did the arc, we've only done the first 2 episodes as a contained story. Because we did 2 post-lockdown episodes when we were first able to get together after about 18 months to do some recording. And the first 2 episodes of the arc were out of lockdown Doctor Who.
Amazing. I'm going to guess what else I'm going to listen to tomorrow now.
And we also did Come Back, Mrs. Noah, which is
no! Oh my god, I bloody love that show.
Fantastic.
When they go up into space and her ass is all over that set, bumping into all those concerts. Oh, it's the funniest thing.
On that electronic chicken with the tie beads coming out of his ass.
I'm missed out here, obviously.
The Come Back, Mrs. Noah podcast coming soon.
It's only 6 episodes. It will fly by.
Hamster with a blunt penknife would do it quicker.
Hello, and welcome back to A Hamster with a Blunt Penknife. And we rejoin the action where poor brave Joe Ford has been infiltrated by 2 Simons.
I'm not tearing your wings off. It's fine.
I'm Simon Exton, and we're enjoying the web planet.
We are. Oh my god! Do you know what a seductive voice you've got. Honestly, you should do all of these. Sorry, Si, you're out again.
Oh well, yeah, I'm not needed anymore. No, it's fine.
When I was first qualified and I was a baby junior doctor working on the care of the elderly ward, they used to call me the patient whisperer.
I bet they did.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Well, actually, do you know what? I'm going to confess something to you, right? So I listened to one of your episodes on the beach the other day because I knew you was coming off. I'm going to listen to one of these episodes and I'm going to listen to this podcast. And the pair of you have got really sexy voices. I was like, oh, gee, I don't mind what they're talking about, but I can listen to these guys all day.
Well, it is something Ken does for a living. So.
Okay. Well, no, because
which episode did you listen to out of curiosity? And massive vanity.
The Time Monster.
Oh God, we get a bit filthy on that one.
Yeah, you surely did.
I was right up Joe Street then.
That's the one where we focus on that time sniffer outer that we call the dildometer.
Well, I hate to say it, but that's precisely what it looks like. I was kind of like reading the synopses of other episodes as well, and there was stuff on there that you had written and your co-host was reading out. Is that right?
Yeah, there is. I try and ignore the fact that he did that because I used to do creative writing and I used to do creative writing about vampires. And it wasn't just the fact that I used to be a massive goth. And I did used to be a massive goth. Just look at my Instagram.
Oh, great. I'm there.
But I started creative writing as a form of therapy after I got knifed. And it just sort of headed on from that. And I am quite proud of what I did. And I did get a few things published. And that was a story that was published in Visionary Tongue, which is Storm Constantine's magazine. I've never actually been able to listen to Ken's reading of it. I get about 3 seconds in and go, nope, can't listen to this.
What, just because of kind of what inspired it and where that all came?
No, not that at all. It's just, I have the same problem with audiobooks. Things read out don't sound right in somebody else's voice. I can't listen to audiobooks because I'm not the one reading it. And when I read a book, it's my voice in my brain.
Really? Well, thanks for sharing that as well, by the way. Do you know, one of the lovely things about doing this, it's not just talking about the Doctor Who, but it's actually getting to know the people as well. There's something very informal about doing a commentary like this, where people feel, I remember the first time that Si came on, and he's become famous now for his Tales of Youth. I believe there's a T-shirt out there with that and TM next to it, and that picture of his face. Si, the other Si, yes. Can you just please, I'm sorry, this is so self-indulgent, but I don't care. Can you just tell everybody what occurred today, please, and how we now know that you are a celebrity?
Oh my God, yes. At work, one of the things I do on a Monday at 11 o'clock at RHS Wisley, plug, is I do the library story time, which is something I've done for, 22 years, I think, since I did my very first library story time now. So I just do it as a matter of course, and I get very good attendance each week, which is fantastic. But today, someone came up to me afterwards and she said, "Oh, thank you very much for the story. Me and my son really enjoyed that." And I just wanted to let you know that my husband told me to come to this. He said, because he's listened to your podcast and he knows how brilliant you are. He loves Blake Seven and Doctor Who, so he's listened to all of those. And I was just sort of blown away by the fact that someone in real life, not on social media, sort of knew what I'd done and came up and just said, "Yeah, I've listened to your stuff and it's great." It's just amazing real world feedback. It's superb.
This thing, obviously it's a fun hobby to have, but it's astonishing the connections that you can make, isn't it?
Exactly. And I will just give a shout out to Tom Keel if you're listening to this commentary. Thank you very much. You and your wife made my day today.
Tom Keel, you're invited to come on anytime you like. Well, look. Here we are. I'm making connections both old and new. We have episode 3 of the Web Planet to enjoy. Shall we, gentlemen?
Oh, yeah. I think we should. Escape to danger.
My God.
Oh, sounds exciting.
That sounds very exciting. Again, it's like
I'm excited.
It's like being in a gay sauna again, I'm telling you.
Yeah, escape that.
Yeah. Especially if you're in one in Brighton, you're in more danger outside the sauna. Okay. Somebody count us in, quick. Change the subject.
Okay. In 3, 2, 1, off we go.
Here we go.
So, as I promised in the last episode, I said I would look up the ratings for the Web Planet, and they held up pretty well. So, episode 1 gets the 13.5 million. And was joint 18th in the charts that week for TV. Then we go to 12.5 for the Zarbi and Escape to Danger. Back up to 13 million for the Crater of Needles.
Wow.
Down to 12 for the Invasion, and then down to 11.5 for the Centre. So actually, it holds up pretty well.
Those are astonishing. Those are the numbers that the McCoy era would weep over.
Exactly.
Wow.
So yeah, it did really well. Each of them was in the top 20, which at that time was a huge achievement for Doctor Who. And I don't think it's till Hinchcliffe really and early Tom Baker that we head up to those heights again.
It's like Ark in Space 2, isn't it? Is the next time
we
go
suddenly
that high.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which was the day my parents got married.
Well, there we go.
Because my cousin had to go out of the reception to watch Ark in Space Part 2 because he was not going to miss it.
I mean, I can understand that entirely.
Yeah.
Heaven Sent was on the day I got married, Did
you stop everything for Heaven Sent?
No, I didn't, but I probably should have done. The relationship didn't last much longer than that, if I'm honest. I should have prioritised the Doctor Who. Dr. Simon Exton, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, fire away.
What's your birth Doctor Who story?
Crotons.
Oh, fabulous.
Oh, wonderful.
I was born the day after Crotons episode 3.
Amazing. Oh my God, you know what? In all this conversation, I've not been watching the programme at all. What's going on here? The Zarbi are going a bit mad.
Yeah, we've had the first chat with the Animus and heard the spooky voice of Catherine Fleming, who does brilliantly. She's very menacing and very, very calm and still.
Is it because I thought it was a bloke initially? It's such a deep voice. I think, is it supposed to be asexual? Is that the idea?
Maybe.
I mean, by the time you get into episode 6, the voice of the Animus does sound very female, but sort of husky, has been chain smoking Capstan full strength since she was about 4.
It does sound like a 40 a day, doesn't it? It does.
Oh, and we've just seen the first instance of the Menoptera flying away from the Zarbi.
Yes.
And the direction was a little bit unfortunate because you saw the Menoptera flying off, and then the Zarbi were obviously waiting for their cue to run after. But when they did, and they had their little arms and things going wild, then they're very exciting.
And what is this strange tube? Dr. Simon Exton is currently holding up a small Zarbi.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's very cool.
Useful. Do you know what? Isn't it stunning? I want one of those.
Oh, that's great.
The horrible people at Eagle Moss who keep producing beautiful, beautiful things that I cannot possibly resist. And every time I turn around and say, I'm not buying anything more from them, they go, oh, look, a chameleon.
Have you got one of the mechanoids?
I haven't, no. I'm limiting myself to, apart from special things like Zarbi and War Machines, I'm limiting myself to just the little shelfy ones.
I've got this fabulous original Dalek here, look. Although
Fabulous.
He's got a bent plunger. I can't tell you how that happens, but it is bent. Sorry. Yeah, so I was going to ask a question. This tubular hairdryer that's come down, because I think is what he calls it, she's supposed to be under the planet. So where the hell? What is that all about?
The speaker.
Okay. Thank you. That was very succinct. Thank you very much. Is this episode where we're introduced to the Optera? Or is that the next one?
I think that's the next episode.
Because Ian's still with the Doctor and Vicky at the moment. So
because he needs to go out of the Carcinoma and meet Vrestin.
Ah, yeah.
And then isn't the cliffhanger to this him and Vrestin falling through the...
yes, that's right, yes.
And you can hear somebody laughing in the background.
So oh, my God, here's where the Zarbi bumps into the camera. Like, whoop,
yeah.
Bonk. There we go. And do you know
that's
what,
a proper bang as well. That is.
I did like the fact that they referenced that in the End of the World.
Oh my God, that's just what I was going to say. But it's deliberate, isn't it? Because it's CGI. So they've done that absolutely deliberately. Oh, here we are, back in the safety of the TARDIS again. Oh, he's still got all those like prickles all over his face, hasn't he, from where that net came up?
Yes.
This has kind of been our first moment of relief, isn't it? Because they've been in that weird atmosphere now for like a whole episode, nearly two. Oh, this is where he drags.
Do something about that face of yours.
Is this the bit where he drags the astral map out of the ship?
Yes.
And goes, no, don't unplug it. We cannot. What is it? What does he call it?
You must never break the astral link.
What does that mean?
Don't unplug it.
Okay. He's got a lot of cotton wool there, isn't he?
Or is it you must never break the time-space link?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I was like, but you know what? That's what's exciting about this period is there's no fixed rules at this point. They can just make up shit like this, and we just go, oh, that sounds intriguing. We never see the astral map ever again, though, do we?
Yeah, Galaxy 4.
Do Galaxy 4, yeah.
What about after that?
No. I think they destroy it in Galaxy 4.
I'd love it if she pulled it out in Legends of the Sea Devils or whatever it's called coming up. It's the astral map. He's trying to figure out where they are now, isn't he? He's like, okay, so...
Yeah, and Ian's taking no notice of him because he's too busy taking his slap off.
I think he might be that. What's that character called in the Chase and Space Museum special features? That guy that's dragged up talking about technologies. The strangest special feature they ever did.
Not much help, is it?
Oh dear.
It isn't. Come on, give me a hand.
TARDIS is fully supplied. Look, fully operational. I know, lots of supplies.
Yeah,
and massive amounts of cotton wool.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's. I guess that's why he came to 20th century Earth. He's got to stock up.
Oh, is that because that's the only place in the universe you can get cotton wool?
Probably, yeah. Unless you want to take it off one of the Varga plants.
You must never break the time and relative dimension link. There we go.
Yeah, I think that's just the excuse as to why they're dragging it out. There's a massive power cable coming up behind it. As Terrence Dick says, we'll cover it with a line.
Exactly.
Do you know what? There's that really creepy cliffhanger in this. Do you remember when that massive protuberance comes out of the wall and sucks?
I knew you'd have something to say about that, Joe.
Views come all over the Doctor and Vicky. I mean, they're covered in cobwebs, honestly. Mind you, that reminds me of one of those saunas as well. There's usually a couple of people. They've been sitting in there for years waiting for someone to have a shag with them. They're covered in cobwebs. Sorry, I'm going to shut up now. I'm so sorry. Do you know, I've got the subtitles on. I can't even understand. I don't even know what anyone's saying. So I'm so sorry. Not a professional at all. Do you think this counts as a sideways adventure or as a futuristic adventure? Because this could be set in the past, for all we know.
Could be far future, could be far in the past. I don't think it makes any difference, to be perfectly honest.
I think this exists in that same sort of weird space as like the Mind Robber and Warrior's Gate, just...
Oh, I love Warrior's Gate. I love Warrior's Gate so much.
Yeah, it's great.
Although I don't remember watching it first time around.
I do.
But I remember not understanding it the first time round. I'm not sure I entirely understand it now. Oh dear, what's happening with that Zarbi? He's not well.
Oh, he's lost one of his teeth.
Oh, Ian's gone off for his subplot now.
But some of the best scenes ever are William Hartnell and Maureen O'Brien. I think they are wonderful together.
Yeah.
But in the way that Hartnell was like dictatorial with Susan, with Carol Ann Ford, there's just a real warmth between the First Doctor and Vicky.
I think it's because she loves the adventure as much as he does, and so they egg each other on.
You know, when they go off to Rome in the Romans.
Yeah.
They're like a pair of giggling kids, aren't they? They find that body and they're so excited that they found the body in the bushes.
I think they learnt their writing mistakes with Susan.
Yeah.
Because Susan's not a great character, but Carol Ann Ford is, she's a decent enough actress. I mean, have you seen her in any non-Doctor Who stuff?
The only thing I've seen her in out of Doctor Who is Shakedown Return of the Sontarans, and she's not giving a great performance in that either, if I'm honest. She plays this drunken vamp fashion designer.
Style, darling.
He was in an episode of Public Eye.
Oh, yes. I've seen that, yes.
As a teenage prostitute not long after she left Doctor Who, and she puts in an absolutely superb performance.
Do you think it's the writing then? Do you think it's the writing in Doctor Who that let her down?
Yeah. And the fact that they had no idea what to do with the character.
I mean, I can't disagree because I think some of the Carol Ann Ford Companion Chronicles that Big Finish did, she gives superlative performances in those, and the writing's just so much better for her.
But yeah, I mean, you contrast what they're doing with Vicky here with how they treat Susan in, say, The Reign of Terror, where she's just whimpering and scared and
Carol,
annoying.
Why are you always so maudlin? Says director Heinrich Hurst.
Yeah, and yet Vicky just has a sense of wonder and love of
Reef,
the
look
adventure.
at the position that Zarbi's putting himself in.
I know, that is obscene.
Goodness.
I'm sorry. I am not here to watch human Barbie Paul. Thank you very much. Oh my God.
Apparently we are.
William Russell is going for it as well.
He's doing a proper reach around.
Next time I look on Pornhub, I'll check out Zarbi humping and see if it's on there. How very disturbing. I mean, William Russell's game, right?
Certainly is.
You sounded disgusting. Did you say that there? Oh my God, look at these Zarbi running. They're amazing. And look, I think that Venom Grub's just waiting for his cue. Look, in a minute, he goes zooming off. Oh no, he doesn't. All right, I'm making it up. Sorry.
And someone's going to go and have to help up that poor Zarbi. He's not getting back up off that floor. There's no way.
Do you know what's nice?
Listening to the commentary, apparently he was supposed to get up, and the actor just couldn't.
No, can someone help me up, please? Can you help me up? There we go. He's got his cue now. The Venom Grub is moving. I've noticed that the lights are down here as well, so you kind of just pick out the Zarbi in the different spotlights to hit them, and I think they look really impressive in the half light. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Oh, flying Menoptera. Look at that.
God, that would be a great exclamation, wouldn't it? Flying
Menoptera.
It was a bit like Mona Lisa's. Oh, dear. What's happening with Barbara right now? I've lost track of her.
She's on holiday.
Oh, she's not in this episode?
No.
Do you know, I have never ever noticed that.
Well, you can
not say something.
It's obvious. Because, so she's been taken to the crater of Renee, so she's just on a long journey now. Yeah, she's trudging over the surface.
Yeah, she's on the bus.
She's on the bus to the Crater of Needles. Okay.
Yeah, it's a megabus. It will take its time.
The most egregious example is when she says in the Sensorize, and I'm going to stay up here on the spaceship. Go on, off you go down there and have some fun, you know?
And I'll come back with a
they've got a
suntan.
sunbed up here.
Yeah, she's very tan when she comes back, isn't she? Oh, bless her. Some of the other examples that you can really tell when someone's banged up for an episode or unconscious for an episode.
Or Susan's about to be married off in The Warrior People of Peru.
Ah, that old classic, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the way he holds her. Look, he cups her face. It's just really lovely. Do you remember the scene in The Crusade where he's like, it's going to be
It's very, very interesting.
interesting dude. Yeah.
Who's your friend?
They'll make you like a veritable strutting peacock.
Oh, I didn't fancy being a strutting peacock.
Who said, who's your friend? Because that's totally Maureen O'Brien. That's not me.
Yeah. I love it when she slips into her scouse every so often. It's really good.
Oh my God, one of the funniest ones.
Nothing wrong with slipping into a bit of scouse.
Do you know, I've never done that. I've never done that.
Not me.
Well, Fraser's not that far away from there, There's that fabulous bit in The Romans where she's like, you've done all this. And Harlow's like, you can't blame me for all of this. And then he just looks at the camera and he's like, oh, my fault. Ha-ha! He's so happy.
But isn't it fascinating that he is so different to the way that we were told that he was a grumpy, crotchety old man? But he's got such a sense of fun and he's got such a wonderful giggle. And all of these things were really surprising when I saw the Hartnell era the first time round. Well, because he's so far away.
He's misremembered later on, isn't he? In the Five Doctors and in Twice Upon a Time.
Because the only episode anyone had seen at that point for a long, long time was An Unearthly Child and the first story, depending on 2 stories maybe. And so everyone thought, well, that's what he's like. But he's not really like that at all. He softens fairly quickly.
Well, I mean, he was like that for a bit because he's pretty selfish and miserable in the Daleks. And then you've got Edge of Destruction and that fantastic scene at the end where Barbara just absolutely rounds on him. And you stupid old man, you should go down on your knees.
Simon, I thought you were going to act out that entire scene then. Go on, off you go.
No, I'll have to floof up my hair like Barbara.
Back comb.
Has there ever been a companion that has torn that much of a strip off him again?
Not that I can recall. And then, do you know what? I love the fact then he returns the favor in the Aztecs, doesn't he? He's like, no, that's just that you didn't think. I think there's I'm not going to say it's sexual chemistry, but it sizzles between the two of them, doesn't it?
Well, they're treating each other as equals.
Yeah. Which is what makes me really annoyed when he's misremembered as a comedy sexist in that Stephen Moffat.
He's not like that.
And he doesn't treat women at all like that.
No, you watch it in this story, it's Barbara who suggests that the TARDIS needs a good clean and a tidy up and things like that. None of it comes from the Doctor at all. He treats his female companions as equals, but particularly Barbara.
The amount of men that have come into my home and said, this place needs a jolly good spring clean. Honestly.
I've never said it, Joe. Never.
No, you've been thinking it, though. I know you have.
There you go.
We've got this lovely relationship here between Heron and Frestin.
I love that they can't say the names. That's such a wonderful little touch. And I don't know whether that's in the script or whether it's sort of the actors thinking about the parts that they're playing and they're bringing that to it. But again, it just makes them seem that little bit more alien.
Well, I think the Menoptera names were changed partway through to make them sound more alien.
Okay.
I think Prapillus was certainly changed, and Froststar as well, to make them sound a bit more alien.
Yeah, a bit more exotic. Do you know what? If I didn't know any better, I would have suggested those names have come straight out of a New Adventures book, This got there first. It's a nice relationship between Preston and Ian, isn't it? It's It's very
it is, and it's really the thing that saves that whole subplot, because he's booted off underground and doesn't really do an awful lot. There are some very nice touches to it and some nice dialogue, but it doesn't actually advance the plot in the slightest. Whereas Barbara is front and center and is really the one that saves the day.
Oh, I do love those terrible grub people, though. Casimov lights, those people. I think they're great. And that poor woman who shoves her face in a wall and gets acid all in her face.
Yes.
Yeah, that is horrible, but it doesn't actually advance the main plot. And then they're treated as a joke right at the end.
They are actually, aren't they? Yeah, and they're very saying, "Oh, bless! Look at that venom grub! You can see the man walking across,
just bouncing around, isn't
he?" Oh, marvelous! But what could they do? I mean, come on.
Of all of the alien creatures that they produce in this, the venom grubs are the only ones that really don't work.
And they're supposed to be woodlice. Is that the idea? They're woodlice.
I'm guessing they're woodlice. Yeah, I mean, the Zarbi look great. The Menoptera look fantastic. The Optera work for what they are. And when we get to see it, the Animus is a really...
Yeah, it looks like a massive spider, doesn't it? Oh, she says that, yeah. But do you realise there's some poor bugger on his hands and knees in that venom grub getting across that set?
Yes.
The things people do for money, I'm telling you. Honest to God. And also, there's a bit of confusion direction there, because I remember the first time I watched this, and that kind of silt and smoke started coming down, and then they're just gone. I'm like, well, what's happened? I'm very confused.
It's because you don't see it. You don't see them. Now you would have a scene of them sort of tumbling with rubble falling all over them and things like that. But obviously they haven't quite got the time or resources to make that happen at this point. And I think you get a bit more of that at the start of the next episode, don't you?
Plus laughter.
Yes.
But would you say that the cliffhangers on a whole are strong in this story, or not the show's best?
I think they fit in well with the story. I mean, sometimes you can get episodes that are so geared around giving a good cliffhanger that they deviate from the story itself. Whereas this one, they fit in well. They don't distract you too much from the plot. And for all that the setting is really unusual and innovative, the plot itself is pretty linear.
Yeah, really. And I think that's probably where people have like the most issues with this. There's atmosphere, but there's not a lot of complexity. And I would question whether there's 6 episodes worth of incident happening here as well.
No, because the Optera were a last-minute addition to the script. So a lot of those scenes were written by Dennis Spooner to fill it out a bit more. So I don't quite know what they'd have done with Ian for all of those scenes otherwise.
That's so interesting, because those are the scenes where there's the most sort of metaphor in the dialogue. And then they talk about making mouths in a wall, i.e. walls and things like that. It's really interesting dialogue. Do you reckon then this would make a much tighter 4-parter?
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the Web Planet then, would it?
And also, you'd have the main cast absolutely tripping over each other. Okay, Ian is sent underground as a sideline, but his interaction with Dresden is really nice. The Optera add nothing to the plot, but they're actually quite nice little creatures.
Well, fellas, we've had 3 episodes of the Web Planet, and I'm going to tell the truth. We're taking a quick break now of possibly a week or 2.
We haven't even said how long it's going to be.
We're going to be back super refreshed for the last 3 episodes of the Web Planet. I've only watched the first 3, so I've got the next 3 to watch again now. Any final thoughts before we go?
It's good, isn't it?
It's really good.
I'm loving this.
Well, we'll be back for 4 to 6, although they won't know this because I'm going to bring them out consecutively.
Hamster with a blunt penknife would do it quicker.
Hello, and welcome back to Hamster with a Blunt Penknife. This time on Tales of the Aesop Galaxy, we return for our regular visit to Vortis, where Joe Ford feels an irresistible pull, Cy Hart has come across a gaping chasm, and Simon Exton has come down with a nasty case of the venom grubs. This is The Crater of Needles. Welcome to the Web Planet, Episode 4.
Oh, that was beautiful, honestly. Absolute filth, but beautiful. If your
I've been
mind,
down many a gaping chasm, so that's fine.
I have heard that rumor. In fact, I'm sure all three of us have. In our time. Yeah, here we are, episode 4 of The Web Planet. If I could just ask Si, when did we record the first 3 episodes of this?
Was it June? And here we are at
No.
the end of September.
I think it might have been 2020, you know?
It was earlier than June. I think it was
Oh,
April.
right. Oh, okay.
It was a while ago. And we've all admitted off camera that we've completely forgotten what we talked about in the first 3 episodes. So, at the risk of repeating ourselves, shut up and pay attention, all right? Because we're all really incisive. So, if we say it twice, I'm sure it's very intelligent. Do you guys remember anything at all?
Well,
We talked about the Web Planet.
I do remember that, yes.
We
I
talked
remember.
about William Hartnell a bit. I remember particularly his bonkers performance in episode 1.
And Simon totally slagged off Donna Noble. I remember that.
I didn't. I slagged off Catherine Tate. I like Donna Noble. I don't think she's well played.
Look here, you and me are going to do a series 4 one, you know, all right? We need to redress this. Well, look, raring to go. Would Simon like to count us into this episode, please?
Well, should we do a quick recap first? Because we've probably all forgotten what's happened.
Well, I'll tell you what, Si's done this, and I've had it thrown at me recently. The recap's all yours. Off you go.
Okay. Right. Well, the TARDIS family have landed on what is, to date, the best realized alien planet. They've met a load of really camp butterflies, some very butch ants, and a talking hairdryer with a gold jewelry fixation.
Oh, yeah. Was that the cliffhanger when that came down?
Isn't the cliffhanger to this one where Ian and Vrestin fall down that big hole?
Oh,
And
that's
somebody
Yes,
else
right.
in the
because
background?
we're about to meet the 4th different alien race of this,
Oh, yeah.
of this world, aren't we?
I forgot the mobile footstools.
Yeah, the jumping duvets.
What are they called? The Optera?
Yeah.
Optera.
Honestly, it's a performance and a half, I'll tell you. And I don't know if you would pay attention, but there's a bit of laughter at the beginning of this. I think when they were filming this, they're having a bit of a giggle because you can hear someone in the background laughing their head off as they head down that chasm.
And, you know, the Optera, they're millennials because they've got white dreadlocks, cod shamanism, and really bad art.
And that's the commentary you're here for today, folks. All right. Well,
It's a good thing most of your listeners are of a certain age.
Aye, and sexuality.
Yes.
Simon, would you care to count us in?
Absolutely. Okay. Go on 3, 2, 1, go.
The best realised alien world today. Hang
Yeah.
on. What's its competition?
The Sense Sphere and Marinus.
Oh, right, yeah.
Oh, and Scaro.
What's the next best then, do you reckon?
Skara. It's got to be Skara, hasn't it?
When's that?
That was in the Daleks, Joe.
No,
Remember?
yeah,
Dr.
that's been. I mean, after this. What comes next?
after this.
Oh, after this.
Would
What,
be
classic
Iridius.
or modern?
Or no, it'd be the Space Museum.
Well, you think that's well realised? That desert planet.
Well, it's dusty.
I quite like the jungle in Dalek's Master Plan, you know.
Yeah, that's really well done, isn't it? Can't beat a black and white jungle.
Okay, they've fallen down a ruddy great hole here. Oh, I love. Is this Vrestin, Ian's mate?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a really nice character. They are all giving really decent performances underneath those masks.
And the Monoptera are one of the very few times that aliens actually come across as alien. Normally, it's just humans that look a bit different. The way of speaking, their motivation, all of that is very human. The Monoptera are completely different. They have a different way of speaking. They have a different way of moving. They got a choreographer in to work with them. They do all the hand movements. I mean, okay, now it looks like they're doing bad voguing, but it does look really alien.
I love it. You know, when they get really angry with each other and they go, that's a really great way.
Oh, God. When Helio first turns up, and we'll turn up to that, it's like...
Oh, man.
I mean, Helio is such a drama queen. It's not true.
Oh, absolutely.
He is me in the Web Planet, I'm telling you now.
But it's like New Gay turns up at work and...
Yeah. I'm the only gay in the office, right?
And even worse, Barbara as the office fag hag
Yeah.
walks to and is friendly to New Gay, and oh dear.
I mean,
It's not going to be popular.
Talk about prestige actor. What was Martin Jarvis a prestige actor? Was he just starting out?
He was a new actor at this point, wasn't he? He was just starting out his career. He says in his autobiography about this, he said he was offered this brilliant part of a heroic prince who was going to come sweeping into the story, and then realised that it was actually an insect prince. And he hadn't realised that sort of from the proposal that was given. And then he talks quite a lot about being drilled by Rosalind de Winter and what a dragon she was, and how she sort of made them all do the hand movements and practice everything together. And he said every time he tried to sneak off from those lessons, she would be calling him back and not taking any nonsense and drilling everyone sort of quite heavily.
He's marvellous on the DVD, on the documentary, because he goes, I was under the impression this wasn't Doctor Who and these Doctor Who people. It was all about Prince Helio, the hero of the piece. It's actually in about 4 scenes, isn't he?
One of the things I really like about the Menoptera is that you can tell that they're ages because they really struggle with all the names. And I really like that they have different versions of the names for everyone because they can't quite pronounce the Earth names properly. And that's something we don't ever see again.
Does he say Heron instead of Ian?
Yeah.
And Habana instead of Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great. Did you see that model shot a minute ago of the Crater of Needles where it pans down? You've got the webbing over it and then like all these needles sticking up.
And the Crater of Needles the set looks fantastic. And Barbara and Frost are walking through it, and there are the Menoptera generally doing fuck all in the background, to be honest. They don't really seem to be doing very much.
Well, they're picking up sort of seaweed, aren't they? I'm not sure.
That one in the background there isn't. It's just voguing in front of a pillar. I mean, it's clearly off its face on something.
Yes, apparently, I was reading this up today because I did do a little bit of homework for this episode, that they had imported seaweed from Cornwall that was brought up. But it started to cook under the studio lights, so there's the smell of rotten seaweed.
Well, you get flies on the seaweed. By the coast, you get all flies on the seaweed and stuff, It's nasty. What are they actually doing with this seaweed? Like, is it explained?
Oh, it's what they build the carcinome from.
Okay.
It goes through the acid pools, doesn't it?
Gotcha. Oh, okay. Now the Zarbi is attempting to brain control Vicky.
Oh, it's amazing what they can do with their mandibles.
I'm not answering that. How powerful does Hartnell look in this story? Well, he's completely in command, isn't he?
Yes, and he's now in the hairdryer, and so you can only really clearly see his chin, and he's obviously monumentally pissed off at being mithered by this disembodied voice, and it's a fantastic performance. And you know that he's lying through his teeth, and he's doing it really well.
How many cigarettes a day do you imagine the actress who played the voice of the Animus had? Because I'll tell you what, that is one croaky voice.
Oh, she'd been on Capstan Full Strength and she was about 4.
But it's a really sexy voice as well, isn't it? This is the first female villain we've had, really, apart from What's-Her-Face in the Keys of Marinus for the last couple of episodes.
Oh, the one who went on to become Lady Painfort.
That's the one. Catherine Fleming, I think it is, isn't it, who plays the voice of the Animus. She's superb. She's so sinister.
Do you see Vicky there, like with her eyes rolled up in her head? You could take the piss out of that, but she's completely committed. I think we did definitely talk about Maureen O'Brien in episodes 1, 2, and 3, but I think it's worth reminding just how good an actress she is.
Because Vicky as a character is given almost nothing to do. She incites the revolt in the Space Museum. That is about her only really positive role. But she's one of those actresses that is always there and doing things, and she's there in her performance, in the background, and she's always entertaining.
Yeah, she's always reacting and listening and looking and doing things, which is really, really good. I think she's absolutely tremendous.
Yeah. Well, she's kind of how they got Susan right.
Yeah. I've got a question for Simon then. Do you think that is generally the case in the classic series, that you kind of got sketchily written companions and the actors had to fill in a lot of the gaps?
Yes, for the most part. I mean, certainly 60s stuff. So you've got Susan, who is weird granddaughter, Vicky, who is replacement granddaughter, Ian and Barbara teacher and teacher. Stephen, space pilot that we forget about in 3 seconds flat. Katerina.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Katerina's dreadful.
Dodo, we forget about in 3 seconds flat, even after she's appeared.
Well, Dodo changes pretty much from episode to episode. Sarah Kingdom is very good and has a good and consistent background. Ben and Polly possibly have a little bit more to them, or is that just because their performances are so good?
I think initially in that first story, they're very well characterized, and then they start falling into certain traps as they go along, like the cliches of the companion. But you're right, the performances are so charismatic that just papers over all of the cracks.
Yeah, and certainly 60s companions either fall into the hero role or granddaughter / surrogate granddaughter that needs rescuing role, which you don't really see after the 60s until we get to Adric.
That's true. Yeah, I work on Adric and Nissa. So my question for you then, Si, is what's the exception to the rule there? Who's the classic companion that comes fully formed in the writing and then the acting just adds the polish?
Oh, no, that's a very good question.
Well, I've been at this for a while now, you know.
Well, that's very true. That's very good because there are some who do come fully formed and are ready to go. I think it always tends to be the ones who are sort of the stronger female characters. So someone like Zoe and Liz, and I think possibly the two Romanas and Leela.
I'll say Leela as well, for sure.
And in a lot of those cases, you've also got then the actor bringing something to a really well written part or a better written companion part that isn't necessarily, well, they're just adding extra value to what's there. So I mean, we've talked about Louise Jameson just being such a thoughtful actor.
You see the fear in Tom Baker's face. He's like, I've got to up my game, you know. There's a couple of details I've just seen a minute ago. They've got like down in the Optra caves, they've got like sort of murals on the walls, haven't they? It's sort of art. And then when they put Ian's hands into some strange gunk, there's like an adhesive, isn't it? Where their hands, rather than having handcuffs or seaweed or something like that, just lots of lovely little touches to make this really alien.
Yeah, I mean, the slight problem with that art is they say, oh, these are our gods, the Menoptera are our gods. And what they've got is weird things with lots and lots of legs. So it's kind of like a half millipede, half spider that looks nothing like a butterfly.
Oh, I love those. The ones on the skateboards you talk about, the Venom Brubs.
No, the pictures that the Optera have drawn, and they're where Dresden is talking them round and saying the Optera aren't your gods, they're your kinsmen. And before that bit, they point out the art and say the Menoptera are our gods. But the pictures are, it's like a blob with lots of legs coming off it.
I think Richard Martin probably did it in about 2 minutes. But it's had a bit of detail, a bit of culture to the Optera.
Did Richard Martin ever do anything in 2 minutes?
His camera script? I don't know.
I ain't going to answer that question. Hey, do you know what, right? I'm not averse to using a bit of Vaseline, you know, but they go to town over the lens in this. I think that's a bit distracting, Vaseline.
Yeah, it adds to the weird atmosphere, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think it works quite well. The problem is there are certain scenes, particularly when we come on to the big battle scene later, where they've obviously had to use all of the cameras, and there's one that doesn't have the Vaseline on. When it swaps between cameras, you've got clear to weird alien. Now, when it's doing weird alien, I think it works really well. And this is part of this is the best realized alien planet we've seen, because it's not just the sets. It is that distorting gunk on the camera.
But and I know, and so I knows that Richard Martin covered that in Vaseline. But you know, if somebody was new to Doctor Who, I know why would you choose this story? I do not know. But you'd probably just think, oh man, the cameras back then, you know, they're fucking filthy, aren't they? Like, I don't know. I just think to a casual viewer, that would be a bit of a distraction.
Except that it jumps between external scenes and scenes inside the Carcinome.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so suddenly you've got the clear
language of the inside and the outside. And pay attention, Joe. Is that what you're saying?
It was.
Be interesting to know how it would have appeared.
You want to take.
But it'd be interesting to know how it appeared on the TV in 1964.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 65, isn't it? Sorry. And on the tiny little screen that you've got at that point and the 4 or 5 lines, whether that would have made a big difference. So we're watching this on a massively bigger screen, even on our computer monitors, bigger than it would have been seen possibly for the majority of the audience at the time. And it's difficult to know how it would have come across smaller.
I think they're doing us a favour. They're getting us used to all that fucking lens flare in Chibnall's time, aren't they? 'Cause it looks just like that to me. What's going on here? Oh, they're attacking the Zarbi. Yeah.
Yes.
Is this the bit where they go Zarb? Use that bit.
That's a bit later, isn't it?
Okay.
Oh, look, they've got him on his back. Oh, he's powerless now. He's not going to get back up.
Look at them picking up that venom grublet. Don't show the actor. Don't pick it up too high.
No.
I mean, that's quite
they've
horrible.
squashed him against a rock, which is exactly the kind of thing we would do.
And the sound effects there with the splat and that's really quite horrible.
Simon, that was amazing. Can you do that again?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it does suggest something quite unpleasant is going on, doesn't it? Well, it's interesting because they wouldn't show us in the earlier episode the wings coming off the Menoptera.
No, but they're happy to show a big cockroach being splattered against a rock.
Do we see later on when the woman shoves her face in the acid to let them get through underground?
We see her put her head into the...
You do, but it's in the background.
Yeah.
That's horrific, that bit.
There's some really nasty
isn't
bits
it?
in this story. And the only way that they were able to get away with that whole ripping the wings off thing is because the Menoptera are so alien. Because if you had somebody who was obviously bloke in a rubber suit where you were ripping the arms off, there is no way they would be able to get away with that.
I mean, Case of Androzani is pretty violent, but they stop short of Peter Davison's arms being pulled off by that android, don't they?
About the closest you get is Litton's hands in Attack of the Cybermen.
Yes.
That's pretty horrific.
Or the bit in the Leisure Hive where you see all the dislocated body parts.
Yes.
After their visit to Loman has been quanteled to death.
It's a brilliant cliffhanger, isn't it? That dismemberment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Doctor's looking a bit thoughtful now.
Well, he's going, oh, fuck, they've just realised that I'm lying through my teeth. How do I get out of this? And you could just see all of that going across his face.
He is absolutely remarkable, isn't he?
Have you seen Adventure in Space and Time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill Hartnell can do this with a look.
Yeah.
And, he can.
Yeah.
Everything you need to know about what's gone on with that character, you see across his face in that bit. He is astounding. I mean, 60s Doctor Who is my absolute happy place. And it's down to the quality of the acting because, Katerina aside, there isn't a bad one.
What, you mean actor at all in 60s Doctor Who? Or
No, a regular cast.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
No, I'm not saying there aren't bad performances. No.
I watched The Underwater Menace the other day, all right.
I love The Underwater Menace.
Me too. Oh, dear.
But you're right.
I heard your opinion of the wetsuits.
Yeah, amazing.
I mean, you're not wrong. But
No, better Jamie in a wetsuit. Come on. Sorry, Si.
I was just saying, you're absolutely right. I mean, these are all actors who have learnt their trade doing everything so fast that they're used to working at the pace of Doctor Who, even though it's an exhausting show to do. They're used to learning a script a week, having the rehearsal time, and getting it done almost as a live performance in front of the camera at the end of the week. And then you carry on and do the next one. They've all learnt their trade the hard way. And I think that shows in a lot of the performances because they are capable of doing this in the way that... Imagine John Pertwee doing this. That's what I always say. Imagine John Pertwee doing 46 weeks a year or whatever.
Imagine Peter Davison doing it. He'd look a little bit embarrassed by it all, wouldn't he? Be like, what am I doing here? I'll take the paycheck at the end of the week. Bless him.
But they all go in with absolute conviction and they all believe exactly what they're doing. And even if they might think this story is grand folly and completely off the wall, they're giving it everything that it needs to be. It's taken seriously all the way through.
Well, interestingly, on the documentary where you've got William Russell and Maureen O'Brien, they're both talking about this story in very complimentary terms that, we went and we did something that was completely out there and ambitious And I think it's Richard Martin who's got the biggest problems with this, because he's complaining that he didn't have the time. I think he had a certain vision of this story. I don't know if you've seen any artwork that's been done of the Web Planet, of like the butterflies flying around moons.
Yeah.
That. And there are moments, I think it's at the end of this episode, isn't it, where they all come flying down, where he kind of almost captured the vision that he had. But time, money, all of those things meant that actually a lot of this had to look a bit amateurish because they just had to get it done.
Yeah, and one of the big special effect shots from episode 6 was just cut out because the carcinome dissolved and disintegrated. And Richard Martin was on holiday when the editing was being done for episode 6. So he didn't have oversight of it. And Verity Lambert just thought it looked a bit shit, so she cut it out.
Wowzers. Wow. And it's not the first time it's been done. But usually when they spend money on things, they'll put it in.
Or if something is too horrific, they'll take it out because apparently the dissolution of Padma Sambhavar in Abominable Snowman was so horrific that was cut out.
And there was a sequence in the Claws of Axos as well of Pigman Joss's face caving in, and they cut away.
It went to white, didn't it?
It was so horrific that the kids would never go to sleep.
And there's the scene in the Ark in Space where Noah's begging to be killed, isn't there? That was just too much.
I wish John Nathan Turner had a bit. There's a few special effects shots he probably should have chosen to take out, but he's like, no, we spent money, it's going in. Simon, I'm not saying your name like a Dalek, don't I? Sorry, Simon. The Optera. Now we've talked about the Menoptera and how they've gone into that with a bit of detail, with some movement, the costume. Like the Zarbi, which are giant ants, are absolutely, you can buy into that. Are the Optera a bit of a step too far because they're very comical?
And also they don't make an awful lot of sense. Oh no, we're just getting to the bit where the Menoptera are flying in, and
it's on film, isn't it?
Yeah,
and here's Martin Jarvis.
And they're pumping out dry ice, so it's got a lot of atmosphere. I think these things look fantastic.
He starts off being up himself, and he doesn't really change, does he?
He doesn't learn as he goes on.
But this looks fantastic. It looks really alien in a way that the series hasn't done before, and I can't wait to see what this looks like on Blu-ray.
But I think the film work gives it an extra polish as well. There's a depth to it. I think the backgrounds all look a bit more impressive on film. And it's almost like a little glimpse into how this all could have looked. I'm not slagging this off, but the film work does give it a polish.
No, and I think Richard Martin was good on film where he'd got time. And you think of the scenes in the Dalek Invasion of Earth where they're out on location, and that's all superb work. And when he does the Dalek versus Mechanoids battle at the end of the chase,
oh, that's good.
Again, he can cut fast then, and he can cut between the cameras and keep it moving. And that makes a big difference. I think in the studio, he's so pushed for time, and you can't get things set up how you want them. Whereas on film, you've got that little bit of extra time and that little bit of luxury where you can work and set things up a bit better.
Can I ask either of you guys, and honestly, you don't have to answer this question, but you know this podcast you came on. Have either of you ever been in a harness?
No, I haven't. Believe it or not.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, speaking from experience, these Menopteras flying about on these wires, this must have been bloody painful. I'll tell you what. They must have got up in the morning and gone, right, what am I doing for my salary today? I'm going to dress up like a giant butterfly and get onto a wire and fly across a BBC set. I mean, they're living the dream, aren't they?
I've done bungee jumping. That really wasn't the sort of harness I thought you were asking about.
It really wasn't.
I think we knew what harness Joe was asking about.
There's a lot of scenes of those Menopteras literally flying off that set.
Yeah, and just that bit where the Zarbi loomed up there, that's really, really good. And again, it's like that scene of the Zarbi on the TARDIS scanner earlier on in the story, where it's just, wow, this is really good.
And you actually get a sense at the end there that Barbara's running, because normally it's sort of, we'll do about 3 steps, but oh dear, then we've run out of set. Whereas there is a sense of space in that final set.
And I just want to show you both something now. So if you could just both look up at your cameras. This is what an enlarged picture of an ant looks like in reality. This is what we could have had for the Zarbi, should they be so inclined.
Oh my god!
I'll put this picture up on Twitter for everyone to have. I mean, they're fucking chilling, aren't they? They look like they've got massive smiles on their faces. Oh, Simon is about to show us something on camera. What's that now? Oh, okay. It's the Toys R bit, and I'll say it's more scary. Do you know?
It's a lot quieter than the
it's a
TV
figurine,
ones.
not a toy.
I want to go out on a question though, and I'm going to throw it out to both of you. Let's start with Si and then move on to Simon. Man, oh man, you both have to have the same name, honestly. Do you think there is ever a point in Doctor Who after this where the show is as ambitious as this?
I think it's ambitious in different ways, but I don't think they ever go for anything quite so alien and weird ever again. And that includes the new series. I don't think they will ever do anything quite as outlandish as this. And we're only in the second year, and anything still goes at this point. So there's no story that is going to create sort of 4 different aliens and their world and do it quite like this ever again.
Simon?
I don't think there's anything that creates alienness in terms of sort of alien creatures as effectively as this. In terms of alien strangeness and inventiveness, I think Warrior's Gate is
out there for sure.
That's weird. Yeah.
Actually, I think Warrior's Gate, in terms of inventiveness, surpasses this.
Okay.
But it's possibly the only time that the series does after this, because for the first 2.5 years, the show's finding its feet, and it is inventive in terms of plot. It's inventive in terms of episode length. By the time you get into the tail end of season 3, it's pretty much crystallized into the science fiction stuff, 4 to 6 episode format. And certainly by the time Troughton's coming along, historicals are out of the window. The series is what we know now. But for the first couple of years, it was pretty much anything goes. And yeah, a story starts, it could be over in 2 weeks. It could take the next 12 weeks to finish. It could be historical Earth and you don't see any science fiction in it at all, or it could be Vikings with some sort of time traveler in it, or weird time stuff in a dull museum.
You know, I'd say the only time I can think of where I think the show was as ambitious as this, I'd say the Mind Robber, narratively speaking, creatively speaking, and visually speaking. And I think if it was just the 4 episodes set in the land of fiction, I'd inch it back. But when you add in that very experimental episode 1, that's surrounded by the Dominators, you know, which is cliched science fiction. Sorry, Fraser. And the Invasion, which is, you know, the Earth under threat again, which we've done a few times. So it really stands out where it's surrounded by a lot of cliches. I think that's pretty ambitious too.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with good cliched science fiction. It's, with Doctor Who fans, it's kind of bread and butter. Celestial Toymaker as well, although the surviving episode of that is incredibly dull.
I think the original version of that was probably going to be more ambitious than it actually turned out being. You know, Blind Man's Buff and, you know, Hopscotch and things like that.
Peter Purvis in interviews isn't complimentary about it.
Nobody's particularly complimentary about it, if I'm honest. I'm wondering if Rusty Davies is not going to call him the Celestial Toymaker after all, and rather, you know,
just the Toymaker will do.
I think that's where we're going. Fellas, are you ready to... What's the next episode called?
Invasion.
The Invasion.
Oh, talk about cliches. Yeah. Are you ready to watch the Invasion?
That would be the last episode, Escape to Danger.
That's a Target cliche, that one.
That is. Mm-hmm.
That's the wrong podcast, right? Well, let's skip into episode 5.
A hamster with a blunt penknife would do it quicker.
Welcome back to A Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, the Doctor Who commentary podcast. See, that just rolls off my tongue now after all these episodes.
All that trouble you had with Blunt initially, honestly.
Yeah. Oh. So we're back for episode 5 of the Web Planet, which is Invasion. So it's all going very well so far, I think. Although we've got the jumping duvets now around a lot, so we're going to see a lot more of them in this episode, I believe, and some very weird and strange stuff compared to what we've seen so far, which has been weird and strange.
Yeah. Is this the one where you get that fabulous shot of them looking up in that enormous pyramid? Is that this
The Temple of Light?
Yeah, but actually inside it, looking up.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the kaleidoscope shot looking up. And it's
we see
twirling
it
around
the outside, don't we? In episode 1, the Doctor and Ian in front of it. That's a fantastic show as well. Well, look, who's going to count us in this time?
I'll do it. There we go.
Oh, if you can,
Right,
then.
if we're ready to go in 3, 2, 1, go.
Would it surprise you to know that I've got a question for both of you? And this time I'm going to start with Simon. Okay, this is a 6-episode Doctor Who story, and I've done a lot of conversations about 6 and 4s in the past. Do you think, taken as a whole, watching this as a whole, this would be a bit more successful, truncated to a 4? Or do you think this has enough incident and narrative for a 6?
I think this works well as a 6 because it gives the alienness of Bortis time to really breathe. So you can have longer shots with the Vaseline lens, just enjoying how good the sets look. I think it would be really rushed as a 4-part and not as good. Although as a 6-part, compared to the stories that came around it, it does come across as a bit slow. I think that slowness works for it.
Well, it's never supposed to be seen, was it, as a whole, though? It was always supposed to be seen for 25 minutes once a week. And it's just like a stab of weirdness over 6 weeks for 25 minutes.
Yeah, I say this to lots of people who complain about things like the War Games being dull. The War Games isn't dull. It's a brilliant story.
Amazing.
But if you try and watch all 10 episodes back to back, that's really dull.
You struggle.
But if you watch 1 or 2 episodes at a time like it was supposed to be done, it is absolutely brilliant. And that's true for pretty much the majority of classic Doctor Who. Certainly 60s and 70s, it was never designed to be watched as a single entity. And when they wanted it to be watched as a single entity, they re-edited it.
What? So it was shorter?
Wasn't there a digest version of Genesis of the Daleks that was shown as...
Yeah, and I think several Pertwee stories were shown as sort of as a...
Green Death?
Yeah, Green Death and Planet of the Spiders had omnibus editions that cut out quite a lot of the padding.
With decent ratings as well. Maybe people go, well, we'll cut out the flab, we'll give it a go. What about you then, Si? What do you think?
Well, what I like about this one is that because of the way it's structured, you've got 3 parts of the crew split up. So they're having different strands of the story. So Ian has got the Optera, the Doctor and Vicky are paired together, which is fun to watch, and Barbara's got the stuff with the Menoptera. So they've all got different strands to explore, which I think keeps it fresh and keeps it moving, because you can move between the different members of the TARDIS crew and pick up their stories and see how it's fitting into the whole. So that sort of structurally works really well in this. So you've divided it into 3. So immediately you've got 3 different stories happening at the same time, which keeps it moving quite well.
You've got subplots within those as well, haven't you? Like Helio and the other fella who are fighting.
Yeah.
And the Menoptera invasion force and all of that going on as well. Although can I counter that? Because I think they do exactly the same thing in the Romans. You get the Doctor and Vicky together, don't you? And then you get Ian and Barbara on separate. And that's 4. And it just feels so tight as 4. And it's got pace to it. And I don't think this has got much pace to it, if I'm honest.
No, but it's not designed to be that kind of story. This isn't an action adventure or a historical romp. This is more a chance to explore an alien world and what's going on that world. So having the 6, as Simon says, gives it time to breathe and to establish that and to establish all the different parts of this world.
Do you both agree then, like, as a classic Doctor Who fan, that it is nice to have like 6 episodes off world? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, when like you've had a bad day, or like you've got a Sunday you've got to kill or something like that, and you can have 6 episodes of Doctor Who off in some weird space, completely take you out of your life. Like the extra length, I think sometimes there's definitely a strength,
Yes, I do. And when I was newly out of hospital and recovering from COVID, I rewatched pretty much all of 60s Doctor Who because I wasn't really up to doing very much. And all I could do is sit in my chair. And the DVDs that were closest to hand were the 60s ones. And I absolutely loved them.
Did your opinion shift on any stories?
No. Don't think so. Don't think so.
See, Si and I recently watched The Macra Terror, the commentary for that, I really like the Macroterra, but on this watch, I became very aware how it sort of went from being quite bold and sinister in the first couple of episodes to being a fairly laboured four-part Doctor Who story in the last two episodes, lots of adventures down the mine and things like that. I do find my opinion shifts sometimes from watch to watch.
I find I get a lot more out of things if I know I'm going to be podcasting about something because I'm looking out for details.
Yes.
Look for the strengths, well, unless you want to really rip something to pieces. And why would you want to do that with this, you know?
Yeah. But it's like Day of Armageddon. And Day of Armageddon is a great episode. But when you watch it for details, you realise just what a terrible performance Katerina is. And she's incredibly wooden. And it's really shown at that very final sequence where Nicholas Courtney is there pushing buttons and manipulating controls and everything. And she's just staring off into the distance doing a publicity shot.
Simon, without him, we'll never reach the place of perfection.
She delivers all her lines at a very strange angle. That's her one thing.
Sorry, that was so accurate. Do that again.
What? Like this? We
We
must reach the place of perfection.
Oh, do you know what? We're getting the episode 3 exposition now in episode 5. They're explaining about the Animus and when it came along. I'll ask you both a question because I really have no idea. Why does the Animus want the TARDIS?
Isn't it because it can't move off the planet and it wants to go onto the astral plane and sort of expand beyond Vortis out into the universe?
Yes, I love that bloody great spider into the TARDIS.
I don't think it wants the TARDIS. I think it wants the knowledge of the TARDIS crew.
Ah.
Because the final sequence when we get on to episode 6 is all about, with the knowledge that I gain from you, I will be able to invade all of time and space. So it's not the machinery, it's what's inside the Doctor's head that it wants.
Ah, it's the absorption.
And now we're inside the temple and it just looks beautiful. And it's
shot, you know, we were talking, but we had that shot looking up.
Yeah,
we did.
It was terrific. I keep saying the word terrific, but I don't know, there is something about
even this shot here is really nicely framed with the Monoptera with its back to us, looking through into the rest of the set, which automatically gives it more depth.
And through that screen.
There are imaginative things that Richard Martin is still able to do in the studio, even with all the constraints he's got.
Do you know his biggest problem is he doesn't have time for retakes. So if something don't quite work, like the Zarbi crashing into the camera and things like that, or the fella in the Venom Club going across the set on his skateboard a bit too fast, like they just have to go. What they could do? 3 cuts was it per episode?
Yeah, something like that. It wasn't a lot.
And it was physically cutting the tape, wasn't it? Like it wasn't a simple affair to edit.
Yeah, and basically you've got the vision mixer who is working from the camera script up in the gallery, switching between the feeds of the camera. So it's like they're editing on the fly. It's incredible that they're clicking through and changing the shots in real time and piecing the episode together sort of that way. Whereas later on, how it would be now, you would film it from one angle, then you would film it from the other angle and assemble it in the edit. But here, they are doing it as they go.
TV was still being made in story order at this point, wasn't it? Like they literally film it in scene order, regardless as to whether they had to strike up and take down the sets, you know?
Yeah, and you'd get your film work would be then played into the studio in the time that you'd need it and onto the videotape. So you've got those extra few minutes that are done. But even that's being done while you're recording the episode so that it can be pieced together as easily as possible at the end.
With the exception of a handful of episodes that were so technically complicated, they had to be edited on film or were transmitted from film. So that's how we ended up with surviving episodes like Wheel in Space 6 and Underwater Menace 3, because they were so technically complicated. They were transmitted from film and ended up stored in the film library.
And it is worth remembering, I may have mentioned this in our first recording of this, 13.5 million people tuned into the first episode of this, and it didn't hemorrhage that much. I think it stayed in sort of 11 to 13 million for everything. Now, I know there was some.
Yeah, I've got them here.
Oh, go for it.
13.5, 12.5, 12.5, 13, 12, and 12. So it's very consistent.
Figures that, you know, season 18 would look at and weep.
Yeah, absolutely. And you didn't get figures like that again until the Hinchcliffe era.
Yeah.
And then after that, the BBC strike. And then after that, not till David Tennant's and Kylie Minogue for The Voyage of the Damned. So,
can I ask both of you gentlemen a personal question?
It's never stopped you before.
Well, in terms of like sort of viewer identification, given what happens at the cliffhanger of this story, have either of you fine gentlemen ever been covered in a sticky white substance before?
Define covered.
Sai is very quiet right now.
I'm blushing.
He loves it, I'm telling you. It's gross, isn't it? Like, we're not there yet, but it is a very memorable.
Yeah, properly webbed.
They are properly webbed. Boy, that's his granddaughter, all right, or the surrogate at least. All right, Simon, what do you think of Zombo, the friendly Zarbi? Not a lot by the sounds of it.
Yeah, check your Twitter.
Oh, okay, I'm heading there now.
It's all right. It really emphasises just how much of a kid Vicky is, which is great, and it's the character that she's written to be. And she's like that with the Zarbi. She ends up like that with the Chumblies a little bit further down the line.
And Sandy the Fan Beast.
Well, yes.
It comes to a very sad ending, honestly. For the record, Dr. Simon Exton has just sent an obscene picture of both Simon, Sai, and myself. I shall explain what's on there now. Oh, hang on. Is this the bit with the acid now?
It's not terribly far off.
They're sort of breaking through walls right now. So not a lot occurring down here, is it? It's just sort of moving.
This whole thing is a way of keeping Ian out of the way while Barbara sorts the plot out, because this is very much Barbara's story.
Does she incite the revolution then, Barbara?
She kind of controls it. She doesn't really incite it because it's Hilio and his failed invasion and then trying to recover the pieces from that. But she's the one that pulls together the plan that sorts everything out in the end.
That's right. She's got it all fixed. And then the Doctor wanders in, doesn't he? And tries to take control. And do you remember when they try and take his ring off him? And he gets really shirty about it, doesn't he?
Well, you would really, wouldn't you?
It's a lovely bit of bling. Yeah. Oh,
yeah, I mean, this is very much like Ian in the Dalek Invasion of Earth, climbing up things in the mines, under the ground, sort of coming up and being sort of the action figure again. But all the stuff with the Opera is quite fascinating. I like the way they talk in metaphor and simile. And because there's not enough light, they need to punch eyes into the wall and things like that.
Just said it
really, really alien and odd.
The wall is silent. We must give it mouths.
Oh, must give it mouths. Yeah, it's not eyes, isn't it? Yeah.
And you know, the novelisation of this, the Beale Street novelisation, is full of additional sort of metaphors like that. It goes into a bit more depth.
Well, it was one of the 3 original novelisations, wasn't it? Because it was this and the Daleks and the Crusade that were written as full fleshed out books, rather than the Terran Sticks pamphlets that came later. And that's not criticising the pamphlets at all. Okay, they're short, but they're brilliantly written. But this was given a lot more depth. Are those corpses in the background of that temple? Those things on the that just dumped on the ground?
Are they husks?
They could be, couldn't they? Sort of cocoons or something.
Everything about this set is sort of suggesting beauty, isn't it? It's very sort of artistic.
Yes.
Terrence Dick says, actually, about those original novels, he tells a wonderful story about how, you know, they were released but in the 60s and they just didn't impact at all. They didn't really sell. And then in the 70s, a fella bought the 3 of them, slapped up-to-date covers with fantastic artwork on them, put them out again, and they sold like hotcakes. And that's what's kickstarted the Target range. It's like, I'm onto something here. I need new Doctor Who books. Get writing, Terrence.
Yeah, and his writing's very much like Agatha Christie in that there's a real simplicity in the language, but he gets everything across and there isn't a wasted word.
Economy in his prose.
And that's good writing because it's not easy to write simply like that and keep people reading. And it's a lot more difficult than writing long, flowery paragraphs of description. To keep it taught like that and to keep the language fairly simple is really technically difficult.
Yeah, which is why, going back to Agatha Christie, her writing works today, whereas somebody like Dorothy Sayers comes across as very old-fashioned because of the
accessibility.
Yes.
Yeah, and because of the excessive flounciness of the language, Naya Marsh is the same.
But with Christie, she wrote simple prose, but she understood character and psychology, and she delivered it in a really simple way, but powerfully.
Yeah, I love Agatha Christie's work. I reread everything she wrote about every 5 or 6 years. And yeah, she has that brevity and simplicity that puts across everything that she needs to. And you don't realize she's giving you key information. Terrance Dicks's novelizations, they're short, but they do exactly what they need to. And they are a wonderfully entertaining read.
He can capture a setting in a paragraph. And absolutely paint the picture of that setting in about 5 lines. When that poor woman shoved her head in that wall when her face was melted off, did you see them do like the funeral rites? They all bowed and started talking about Podariak or whatever his name is.
And saying this is something that we live with constantly.
Yeah.
And then focusing on the corpse.
Yeah, for ages. That camera lingers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And also the reaction of William Russell watching it as well, which again sells the horrible nature of it because he's so skilled at just conveying that on his face. Like William Hartnell, he's very much sort of similar. So the audience knows what's happened, even if they can't see it. They can only just see the sort of bottom sticking out of the rock face, but they know something horrible has happened.
The scream as well. It's a long scream.
Yeah, it's horrible. And it's like the wings ripping off. The only way that you can get away with it is because these aliens are so alien.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like when Katerina died in Dalek's Master Plan, you didn't see her sucked out the airlock, did you? You saw her in the airlock, you saw her in space, but the actual act of her dying, it cuts away.
You don't see.
This is where we know now we're heading towards the climax because the Doctor and Barbara and Vicky, they're all starting to come together again now with their great plan. So what's the plan?
Well, to control him, you will need his ring.
So what, they're sending in Zombo as a decoy?
Sorry, I was being randomly focused.
It's being rude. Joe, you missed an innuendo. What's going on?
I mean, that's so blatant it barely counts as an innuendo. That's a beautiful set. That's an absolutely beautiful set.
Oh, I love this. Hartnell and who is he talking to? The Monoptera.
That's Hilio.
Yeah.
Hilio, the drama queen, and Hilio is an absolute drama queen. He goes,
you're not having this. No, this is mine.
No.
I'm going to do this.
Who's
you
queen?
can't.
But come on, Hartnell is the biggest drama queen of all the Doctors when he wants to be. You can't accuse me of all this.
Will you shut up, sir?
Yeah. Oh, I love that bit.
Basically, Hilio has got the isotope, which is going to destroy the Animus. It's got the power to destroy it, so they need to get it into the center. And this is what they're planning now.
Maureen O'Brien makes the suggestion that the Animus is like a cancer at the heart of the planet. Is that made explicit?
It was certainly explicit in the planning stages because the name carcinome came from carcinoma.
Ah, okay. That's an extra layer there, isn't it? To people watching it, people have been touched by cancer. Okay. Oh, and who's the old guy? Who's the old Monoptera? He is so cute.
Well, Propilius.
Yeah, oh, he's lovely. And he's kind of talking in a voice like this, a bit like Roy Skelton.
And there's Hlinia, who's the younger Monoptera, who doesn't really do very much, but she's really cute in all the scenes she does.
Can I just say, I mean, they all look pretty similar. The fact that we have been able to determine their individual personalities watching them without the dialogue, they're doing some good work here. I do like the fact that Barbara wants the Doctor's endorsement of her plan. You know, their relationship has come on in leaps and bounds from those early days.
Yeah, there's a lot of development for Barbara, I think, and the Doctor particularly. Less so maybe Ian, and definitely less so Vicky sort of over the course. But Barbara goes on a journey, and particularly in her relationship with the Doctor, it changes over time.
It's like the bedrock of those first 2 years, isn't it? It's our way into that. What's going on here? All these zombies having a kip.
Well, they're allowed to snooze. No, they've gone a bit overboard on the Vaseline there.
And I can
You can't really see what's going on so well, can you?
You see the shadows on the backdrop. That was really apparent. The lighting should have been a bit more sympathetic there. Never mind. When have we ever let the odd?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a beautifully realised alien planet.
Oh, we're heading
They're going into the whole and that backlighting of the carcinome, and as soon as they come in, the Zarbi are just waking up and running around, and those poor fellas inside the Zarbi costume are bending over at that angle all the time. Their lower back must have been killing them.
I feel sorry for the people in the Venom grubs. They're literally on their hands and knees.
Yeah, but we don't see the Venom grubs very often.
Oh, look, he's shooting that from above, isn't he?
Oh,
yeah. So
nice.
he's got a mirror shot to do that so that he could get the angle, because they couldn't get up that high in Studio D. So he's filming on a mirror so that he can look up at them.
You gotta applaud the visual creativity of these people
Yeah.
with no money to play with at all.
Yeah, so I mean, the sets for this story were by a guy called John Wood, and this is the first story that isn't designed by Raymond Cusick or Barry Newbury. So they're bringing in a third person to come and do this, and he gets off to a tremendous start.
Well, what does he do after this then? Do you know?
He comes back quite often, I think, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not so hot on set designers.
Oh God, here we go. Look, this enormous phallus comes out the wall. Have you ever been to one of those
sprays
places?
at you.
The holes in the wall.
I was going to say, if you think that looks like a phallus, I've got news for you.
Okay.
Something is seriously wrong.
I better go see a doctor then. Oh, come on.
There they are. They've been webbed.
I know I can give this thing a bit of a routine, but that is a massive thing that's sticking up out of there and covering him in white stuff. I mean, yeah. All right, we'll go with that one. I mean, I don't think it's the rudest thing we ever see in Doctor Who. Creature from the Pit's coming in season 17, but
And the
go on.
the TARDIS sniffer outer in the Time Monster.
Yes.
Coming inside. Finish us out with one more.
Okay. I always think of the big claws coming out of Axos and the eye of Axos dangling down.
Do you know what, right? I'm not give you nightmares now. You know that big plant in the TARDIS swimming pool?
In Invasion of Time, yeah.
That looks like an enormous vagina, doesn't it? It's absolutely hilarious. Look, I'm so sorry. We talked about metaphor and visual creativity and fabulous performances, and then I have to lower the tone at the last minute. I do apologise, gentlemen.
It's never
Yes, we should have done it earlier.
A hamster with a blunt penknife would do it quicker.
Hello, and welcome back to Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, the Doctor Who commentary podcast. And in this episode, we find Simon Exton reflecting on the moral implications of colonialism inherent in this story. Cy Hart is reflecting on the transient nature of life and beauty, and Joe Ford is reflecting the 9 moons of Vortis off of his ass.
It's big enough, I tell you.
Welcome to the centre. This is Web Planet episode 6.
Oh, you said you did an intro for 5, so can we just hear that, please?
5? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cy Hart is feeling sorry for the Monoptera, Joe Ford is feeling up a Zarbi, and Simon Exton is feeling a bit grubby.
I can't wait to see what you do for the Time Monster, do you know?
It will involve the dildometer.
Okay, here we are. The exciting climax of the Web Planet, where everything is about to come to a head. Are you gentlemen ready to watch this thing?
Oh, yes.
Okay, the Doctor and Vicky are a bit spunky. I'll count us in 3, 2, 1. Now, I have a question from our dear friend and co-host of this thing, Fraser Gregory. Oh no, I've lost it. Hang on. What bloody hell is this question, sorry? Oh yeah, here we go. Right, you ready? Dennis Spooner, underrated hero or villain who made the show too light entertainment? Discuss. Simon.
Definitely not villain. I'm not sure he's underrated because I don't know many people who don't like his stuff.
I love it.
But his stories are great.
Si?
I think he's great. I think he kind of humanizes the show a little. I think his attention to detail on characters is different to David Whittaker's. So he's got a bit more of a populist touch, I think. And so you do get increased humor in the stories, which I think does make a difference to the show. So I think season 1 is brilliant and wonderful, but at times it can be a bit po-faced and a bit over serious.
A bit Series 11.
Yeah. So I think him coming in, and he's got good attention to the characters, I think, as well. So he just sort of humanizes it all and just lifts it a little. And I think his dialogue sings and is a lot more sayable than some of the stuff that they've done in season 1.
Oh, by the way, Si, I think I've killed Caesar Nero.
Oh.
I mean, he had the one-liner down pat, didn't he?
Yeah.
Look at Hartnell at that point. It's, what have I got on my face?
Yeah.
How has my career come to this? Mind you, by all accounts, he absolutely was riding high on the popularity of this show at this point.
Oh, particularly by this point.
Before we lose Jackie Hill and William Russell, so he's really comfortable. The show's getting record numbers. They're having a Fortnum and Mason hamper every week when they're filming. I mean, he's living the high life.
Oh, look, Vicky's still got in her hair.
Yeah.
And dripping down into her eye, poor girl.
Oh, I hate it when you step into a cobweb like that, you know. It's really gross.
Just clings to you.
Yeah. I think I must have had extra Vaseline this week. Look at this.
I have to say, I think at this point, we've got one of the best TARDIS teams that were ever on the screen.
Yeah, I would agree.
They work so well together.
Yeah. They're a rival to really classic teams like Third Doctor and Sarah Jane, Fourth Doctor and Leela.
But I think like they're the sort of characters that you can just hang with. We just hang with them at the beginning of the Romans. We just hang with them at the beginning of the chase.
And at the start of this story as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're having great fun with that Zarbi.
I mean, I don't know if this is a scene I'd have on with a non-fan around. I'm going to say that. Okay. They're dancing around the Zarbi.
It looks ridiculous, but actually, as part of the story, it's fine.
Oh, I think you could point all of Classic Who in that regard.
Well, yeah, you pull things out and you don't see it as part of the whole, then yeah, it's going to look ridiculous.
They pull that scene of Martin Clunes out of Snake Dance all the time, don't they? And yeah, it's a terrific performance.
Yeah, and again, that works as part of the story.
See, that's a tiny little bit of corridor, but it just looks fantastic.
Yeah, and look at this. All of these sort of vines and twigs there coming out of the
roots,
wall.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. It was sort of a nice little spurting going on of acid, too.
No, it's water.
Ah, that's right.
Because there's no water on the surface. Because of the carcinome.
Ah, so when the animus dies, that means the water...
It comes back. Yeah.
Rise up. Stop it, I'll start singing that song from Rosa.
Yeah, because it's pools of formic acid, isn't it?
Yeah.
We must talk about that. I just love that scene in episode 1, you know. When he loses his tie in the acid pool. It's great. Oh no, look at their little fuzzy felt arms.
Oh, fuzzy felt. I haven't thought about fuzzy felt for years.
I just used it to create make Doctor Who creations when I was a kid, you know. Like, seriously. So, Whittaker script edited before this.
Yeah.
And Wiles script edits after this?
No, Donald Tosh.
Tosh, sorry.
Wiles was producer.
And again, that's a sharp turn in tone, isn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But not as much as he wanted, apparently.
No, he wanted it even darker and even weirder. Toby Haydock says that the William Hartnell era of Doctor Who is like the weirdest Doctor Who ever got in terms of landscapes and in terms of storytelling and sound effects. I think, do you agree with that? Do you think the show kind of takes a more traditional science fiction route after we hit Troughton's time?
I think it always sounds weird, particularly through the 60s. It always sounds odd. I think Brian Hodgson is one of the unsung geniuses who worked on the show because his sound effects make these places seem odder than even the visuals are. So you've got all the chirping of the Zarbi, which can be annoying after a little while, but it's a weird and strange sound that you wouldn't hear anywhere else. And you've got things like the chumblies that make the sound of Galaxy 4, which is a very standard tale, but that makes it just that little bit stranger and weirder. And all through the 60s, his effects work is amazing.
Noise of the white robots and their clockwork soldiers in that. The sort of I just feel like in this era, anything goes. In the Hartnell era. And then in the Troughton era, any base under siege goes.
Yeah, because they work out a formula that works, and then they repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And they're looking at their resources. So Innes Lloyd is a very good producer from that point of view, because he works out that if you have a big set, you can use it for 4 or 6 weeks' money to make a really impressive set and then center all the action around that. But it limits the kind of stories that you can tell. And so you're getting a repeat of the same story. And so suddenly Doctor Who's got a formula. The monsters are coming in and you're all trapped. And that's it.
Do you know what I think is the boldest sort of diverse period of storytelling after this? I think it's season 19, where you get Castrovalva, Kinder, Earthshock, Black Orchid, The Visitation. They're so tonally different. Oh, here we go.
And Time Flight's just weird at the end of it all.
We're now in the Animus, and now I feel like I'm watching an art house movie.
That set is tiny, but it looks fantastic.
Yeah. And we've got to episode 6 of the story, and this is a brand new set suddenly that has come from nowhere.
I don't always do that,
and a brand new alien.
Yeah.
Look at that thing. That's ghoulish, isn't it?
And it's kind of blobby and unknowable and strange. And again, it just fits Fortis, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's interesting that it's Vicky, the one that they've got standing up to it at this point, where she's gone in with the Doctor and the Doctor's collapsed almost immediately. And it's Vicky that's doing the standing up resistance.
You've got to keep going. Mm-hmm.
And she makes the explicit reference to a spider, doesn't she? She's a filthy great spider or something like that. I don't think I've ever looked at the Animus in the detail I was looking at it there. You're right, it's a bit unknowable, isn't it? It's a bit... You can't quite fit it to anything you've seen before or since. And that's kind of scary.
It's almost sort of Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
In terms of its alienness.
Yeah.
When you look at it, it's round and it has all these legs coming over, but it doesn't really look spidery.
No, it's tentacles and blobbiness and the sense that it's digging into the ground and its roots are spreading underneath Fortis as well. And they're pulling parts of it off while Ian is climbing up.
Yeah, marvellous. Did you guys see then how gorgeous Ian's arse looked when he was climbing up those roots? His trousers.
You can't miss it, can you?
Oh, man. He's so pretty, Ian, honestly, from both angles.
And the strange thing is, when I was young and a Doctor Who fan, he seems so old compared to all the other companions. Now he seems so young and vibrant.
It comes to us all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my God, look, it's wrapping its tentacles around their arms. Yeah. It's creepy stuff.
To have the Doctor incapacitated, and he's usually the one who is doing this stuff. It's
it
brilliant.
Comes in with the Carzano.
Isotope.
Thank you. What's the Carzano? That is the
Carzano is its home, and it's at this point in episode 6 that it's explaining what the plot was going to be, that it wanted to take from his brain all the information.
And it just said there, Zabi sensor wounded. Now, I'm sorry, we've broken into a lot of buildings, but it's never talking about itself in the third person, is it? Just everything about this is unusual. Look, even that, the tentacles flailing about behind them there. It's having a bit of panic at the Animus right now.
Yeah, and people talk about Axos being this very inventive one whole organism, and it is, but this was there first. Not as explicit, but...
I'd love to have that astral map in my living room,
It's a nice prop, isn't it?
Lovely. Yeah. Okay, so now what they're calling up?
Kermit only turned up twice.
Yeah.
Galaxy 4.
Ah, okay. But Doctor Who were very often doing these innovations in the TARDIS that suddenly get forgotten. What about the fault locator? What happened to that?
Too big for the studio.
jettisoned. You've got the excuse then after Castroval why you never see any of those things again. So are they calling in the Menoptera invasion force now?
Oh, that bit where Propilius is just wandering about and going, oh, they've all gone off.
Yep.
Oh, he has to rush up.
I better go.
Oh, I'm supposed to be over there.
Oh my God, look. He's under the ground.
He's underneath it and he's about to burst in. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like flesh, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that feels very... I am slightly claustrophobic. So to me, this would be a bloody nightmare.
And it's a bit Five Doctors where there's one group coming in from ground level and one group coming in from underneath. There's nobody coming in from above, but...
Yeah, well, it's also a bit sort of the Daleks, isn't it? Where they came in from different angles. Way, behave yourself.
Said nothing.
There are many angles of attack in the Doctor Who story, I tell you.
Yeah, and Ian's giving it a good prod.
So is he literally cutting through flesh right now?
Yeah.
Wowzers. I don't think the concepts, until we've sort of been discussing it, I mean, I hasten to use the word intellectually, the risk of flattering both, but sort of pulling it apart, I'm really realising just how staggering some of the concepts are in this.
And it is much clearer in the book as well. So if you ever have a chance to hear William Russell's amazing reading of it, it's superb. Oh, it's amazing.
Because with some of the things that the Animus says, you can interpret it as the carcinome is an extension of the Animus.
Mm-hmm. Wow, look at that. Okay, it does look a bit like a Saturday Night Live set, but...
Really reminds me of a pub there used to be in Liverpool called Barcelona that had walls that were very similar to that.
Oh, this is great. The Menoptera reaction to seeing the... I mean, they've never...
Yeah, and the light.
Yeah. Oh my God, look at the vines around Vicky now. It's literally strangling her. Oh, and she plays this. What's the female Menoptera's name?
Helinia.
She plays this really well because there's a sort of like, she's almost venerating it while she's terrified.
Yeah, because they worship the light, don't they? In the Temple of Light.
And Helinia is a character that has basically nothing to do. Apart from a little bit of peacemaking, she contributes nothing, but she is so well played.
Yes.
Yeah, I love this with the lights sort of crossing each other. You just wouldn't have seen anything else like this on 60s television at the time, would you?
It doesn't work.
Oh, and Barbara's desperation there. It doesn't work.
Do you know, actually, Simon, you know what that looks like, don't you? The Animus.
What's that?
That fucking great monster that was on that spaceship in Space 1999.
Oh, yes. Yes, it does. Yes.
What was it called? I can't remember the episode.
Dragon's Domain.
Dragon's Domain.
It sucks people in and then spat out the skeleton. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's just as horrific. Oh, wow. Look at that. Do you see it all closing in?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Barbara's throwing everything because she's getting close enough where she's becoming overcome, but she's still firing away at it. Whereas Ian just turns up and goes, "Oh, is everything over?"
Oh, late again.
I mean, it would be rude of me to mention I did just see the string that was holding up the top of that thing there, but
it would be.
But they probably wouldn't have seen that at the time. This is an artifact of the cleaning up and us seeing it at a much higher resolution than it would have been at the time.
My good friend Lucy McCall said the other day, well, we all know it's there anyway.
Yeah.
So why are you letting that bother your enjoyment?
And you see, and here we go. We've got the Zarbi now out of the control of the Animus, so they're doing what comes naturally to them. We've got gardening happening. We've got water coming back onto the planet. And it's very like the end of Colony in Space, where suddenly you've ripped out the machinery or the entity that is poisoning the planet, and life can come back. And suddenly the planet will change and it will bloom.
And there's just random bits of the carcinome on their own in the background.
Yes.
You assume it is because the whole thing is just disintegrating and slowly being resorbed.
Don't you love how the power dynamics have changed between the Menoptera and the Zarbi? They're hushing them away from the water there, like, get out of the way, like a load of wild cats.
Yeah, this is the Menoptera's planet.
And Helio is back to being an in-control drama queen.
Arrogant Rick. Yeah.
Because
doesn't he have a moment with the Doctor when he gives him the ring back?
No, that's Propilius.
Oh, sorry, do you know what? They're bleeding into one to me. One bumblebee's another.
But they're beautifully realised.
Yeah, oh, for sure. For sure. Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the end of The Lion King. You know, when everyone's happy and you see the vast vista of the landscape and, you know, they're all happy in nature. This is the Doctor Who equivalent.
And this is very rare at this point in the show where we have an extended end scene. So usually we've got the TARDIS crew leaving and that's the end of the story. But in this story, we actually get a coda without them, which I think might be the first time we've seen what happens on the planet, only to a small extent, after the Doctor and co have gone, which will become, we'll see a bit more later on. But this is a first for the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's lovely as well. Do you know, I think this is probably the ultimate example here of you can either go with this or you can just write it off as being ridiculous. Where the Optra takes his hands away from the eyes and starts dancing around and going,
yeah,
light is good, and it's so lovely and charming and sweet. And it would be so easy to point at that and see those fuzzy felt arms flapping and go, oh, this is just absurd.
It makes no sense, because if they've spent enough generations underground that they have mutated to the point where they're a new species, then light wouldn't be good.
No.
As a Doctor Who fan, we can just ride over how absurd something looks and just buy into the world they're trying to give us, you know? I think it's just adorable, that scene.
Absolutely, and I don't think anything in this looks absurd. Okay, the Venom grubs look a bit chucked together, but all of the others look great.
Oh, look, they're so happy. They're like those Daleks dancing around in Evil of the Daleks. I love playful monsters. Oh, it's great. Oh, will you come back?
This story made such an impact on the audience at the time. They were really the next Daleks. They got spin-off stuff.
Were they in the annuals, the Zarbies?
They were in the first annual. They got a TV comic strip that started the week after this story finished on TV.
What's the lair of Zarbi Supreme?
That was from the first Doctor Who annual.
Ah, okay.
And they got badges. They appeared in the Doctor Who projector that you could project scenes from stories on, and all
the
sorts.
Aforementioned Target, well, it wasn't a Target novel. The aforementioned novelization.
Yeah.
It clearly made, and you know, I can't say it enough. The ratings, you know,
they held up. It wasn't like it went off a cliff because it was so weird. They stayed sort of pretty much through.
So then, I've got a question for you both. Which, before we give our reasons as to why someone should go and watch this immediately, why do so many people point at this story and laugh? And it does happen a lot. It doesn't always have the best reputation. When we've clearly just spent, 3 hours explaining why there's so much of worth here. What is it about this that is easy to mock? Simon.
I think back in the day, and certainly when I was first involved with fandom, you didn't get to see stories. You got to see pictures and read things. But I mean, I was a fan before any of the VHSs were released. You got to see still images, and the Menoptera, the Optera do look a bit ridiculous in the still images. And so I think that there was a fan wisdom that this was something that looked a bit silly.
Sorry?
I think it goes back to what we said earlier, that as soon as it was available on video, everyone binge watched it. And you'd watch all 6 episodes in a row, and it wasn't designed to be watched like that. And actually, if you take it slower and divide it up, even if you just do 2, 2, and 2, it works better than trying to watch all 6 in a row.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't meant to be watched like that. It's meant to be a slow build-up. It's meant to be a slow story that you get immersed in. And trying to watch it all in one go, I think, would seriously damage its reputation.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the best way to watch this is 3 episodes every 6 months.
We certainly got the best out of it that way. I think the danger of being this ambitious, and we've already explained how incredibly ambitious this is that you risk alienating a section of your audience that likes things to be a bit safe. People watch procedural shows for a reason. You know what you're getting week in, week. And even in periods of Doctor Who, you kind of know. Hinchcliffe, you know really what you're getting. Graham Williams, you know what you're getting. This is out there, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think
But
there
they
was
didn't
also
lose audience.
no, not at all. But I think there's also a tendency within fandom to pick out the bits that didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's the story where Azabi hits the camera, or the Venom Grub hits the set, or this didn't quite work. And so obviously it's rubbish because of that. And it's not necessarily true. It's a very reductive way of watching Doctor Who.
And a lot of people will look at television that was made in what, 65?
Yeah.
And they'll judge it on the techniques that are used in 2022. You know, that's just an absurd thing to do. Why would you even do that? Very, very strange. All right, boys. Well, we've had an exciting adventure on Planet Fortis. We now need to each give 3 reasons. We'll start with Si, and then Simon, and then me. We'll go round and round as to why somebody should grab the Web Planet off their shelf and watch it immediately. Si.
Okay. Well, for me, I'm going to pick episode 1, The Web Planet, because that is just the most bonkers and brilliant episode. And just watching William Russell walking around behind William Hartnell, wondering what the hell is going to happen next, gives me such joy. And watching William Hartnell giggling his way through exploring an alien planet. Yeah, that's one of my favourite episodes of Doctor Who. I really love that episode.
Simon.
I think this is one of the best realised alien planets that was ever in classic Doctor Who. I think it's inventive and pretty much unique, certainly in the 60s, in terms of quite how far it stretched imagination, both in terms of the realisation of the planet and the realisation of the aliens on it.
I'm going to say the characterization of the Menoptera characters, which all kind of look similar, but you can tell from their body language, their characterization, and the performances who they are and what their dynamics are. I think that's an easy thing to pull off, and I think they pull it off exceedingly well. Si.
Catherine Fleming as the voice of the Animus is brilliant and chilling and wonderful, and we don't ever see her. We just have this disembodied voice, and it's wonderful. It's such a great performance. And it's one of those performances in Doctor Who that never, ever gets talked about, and it really should, because she is absolutely brilliant.
Si?
Yeah.
Have you ever been asked, why do you come now?
Once or twice.
Simon?
The soundscape. And I know you two are much more into the soundtracks than I am. I generally only take notice of soundtracks if they're particularly good or particularly bad. And this was brilliant. The sound just worked fantastically. The music really contributed to the alien feel. The sound effects were very effective. I think all of it just contributed to that whole alienness that goes throughout the whole story.
I'm going to say, now you said it was one of the best realized planets, but I'm going to point out the moments of visual ambition that really work. So like the Doctor and Ian in front of the pyramid, the mirror shot up, looking up at the ceiling there, some of the work with the moons behind them. Like it doesn't all work, I don't think. But I think when it all sort of slots together, especially when it's on film, those sequences of the Menoptera flying in are unforgettable. I think this is one of the most visually arresting Doctor Who stories. Sorry.
I'm going to go for the body horror that we don't often get at this era of the show. So the ripping off the wings, which is something that a child might do to an insect in the garden or whatever, tearing the wings off a fly or whatever, and the Optera sticking her head into the wall and being covered in acid. It's horrific in a strange way, but it's horrible and nasty. And again, Richard Martin directs it quite sensitively by not showing it, which makes it even worse in your imagination than it would be sort of seeing it on screen. So just ripping the beautiful wings off the back of the Menoptera is a horrible, horrible thing.
Brilliant. Simon?
The TARDIS and the TARDIS teams, because we get some really nice TARDIS scenes and interaction between the regulars, particularly in episode 1. This is one of the best classic era TARDIS teams. I think it's certainly one of the best of the 60s. Troughton, Ben and Polly, I think, is the only one that comes even close. And Barbara in particular, this is her story. She takes center stage. She's the one that's leading the rebellion. Ian is hidden away underground, quite literally, and sidelined. His contribution to the plot is fairly minimal. The Doctor and Vicky are stuck in the carcinome. Barbara is the one. She's out there. She's front and center. She is leading the charge. And considering she's only in it for 5 episodes because she had a holiday in the middle, this is absolutely her story. Barbara is one of the best realised classic companions, and this is a fantastic story for her.
And my last one is going to be, because I think on this viewing, I realised how effective it is, but the Animus, both visually and in conception, as this sort of cancerous evil at the heart of the planet, and just how that is explored. It's one of the more unusual Doctor Who monsters. And, you know, I've mentioned a couple of, I lost my mum to cancer. So to see this sort of visual representation of this horrible, sort of unknowable, unkillable, insidious monster reaches out into this planet like cancer does in the body of so many people. I mean, it's very scary when you think about it like that. Actually, it's visualized in a very scary way in this as well. I think it's very different, and I think it's fantastic because of it. My God, I think we've literally described why the Web Planet is the ultimate Doctor Who story.
Yeah.
I don't think we can sing its praises more. I think people may have come to this, you know, expecting us to take the piss. They'll be disappointed. Okay, so very briefly, Si, where are we heading next, you and I?
Me and you, with Fraser, next, are going to the moon via TMAT. When it's working.
There's a hot blonde, you know, who's ready to send us.
There is. She'll count us in.
And a weedy wimp up on the moon who's going to sell us out. And Simon, where are we heading next?
We're heading to the moon.
Are we?
A couple of years earlier, and we are going to visit a moon base.
Oh, of course. You know, I thought we were doing the Time Monster next, you know.
That's the one after that.
I was trying to remember when in the Time Monster they go to the fucking moon, you know. I'm like, I remember that thing.
So we're both going to Troughton Moons.
There we
go.
I beg your pardon. A fair few women visited those as well, you know. Well, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time, both of you. It's been such fun to talk about this story.
And I'm just going to slip a quick plug in because both of you are joining us on the Exton Moss experiment, aren't you?
Yes,
we are.
So I'm, for the first time ever, going to be watching Doom Watch. 4 episodes have been selected for me to watch. Now, this is notoriously the show that Terrence Dicks said he didn't even want to look over their scripts to see if they were exchanging the same ideas because it was so terrible. But I know from you that this is a show that's worth watching, so I cannot wait to talk about it.
And I am going to be discussing a show that I discovered when I had COVID earlier in the year and ended up watching almost the whole existing episodes. So I'm going to be doing a story from the series Ace of Wands, which is utterly and completely bonkers. And
what's that? What is it?
It's difficult to describe now, but basically it's the adventures of a magician and his friends, but he has psychic abilities and comes up against really bizarre plots.
That sounds amazing. I'm sold. Well, we're going to be recording those very soon. I don't know when we're coming out. Oh, sorry, we came out years ago, obviously. But I don't know when we're going to be. When do you know roughly when we're going to be released?
Oh God, no, that's down to Ken, and we have a tendency to slot extra things in. So the next episode we're releasing is a memorial to the Queen.
Oh wow!
And that's something that was recorded very recently. Whereas we've got like our commentary on the moon base was recorded about 3 years ago, and we haven't got round to releasing yet. So commentaries with other people we tend to release as quickly as we can. So I would hope fairly quickly, but I'm not the one that does the editing. I just turn up and talk.
I'm just going to do one more quick, brief plug, which I am going to now take out of Sci Heart, because Maximum Power Series B is finally soon to be released.
It is
fantastic.
Yes. So we've done a very, very, very special episode to start the series off. And I can't say more at the moment on mic because it might not have been released by the time this commentary comes out. But I'm editing that very shortly. And yeah, it's very, very exciting. And then we've got our 14 episodes for Series B and our retrospective ready to go.
Did you just say you can't say anything on mic?
Oh, Joe! Oh,
I ain't giving no.
That was a clue.
You can tell us off mic. You'd be like, fellas, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
This has been wonderful. Thank you.
And it's a joy as always, Joe.
We'll see you soon.
A hamster with a blunt penknife would do it quicker.
Well, I think it's fair to say that Simon really likes the Web Planet. Next up, it's my turn as Joe and I watch all 4 episodes of Robot, Tom Baker's debut. But if you've enjoyed this edition, then go and check out Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, as there's a whole host of really good guests covering a huge range of Doctor Who stories from the 60s through to the present day. Until next time, thanks for listening. Ta-ta. The Exton Moss experiment featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was performed by the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.